are going live. We are going live. And we're now officially live. Welcome everybody to Just Chatting Do's and Don'ts, costume contests. And figured as an easy way to have everybody introduce themselves was through the nice little video package we had at the start. But for everybody here that you can see, I'll have you guys do it. Just say who you are real quick so everybody knows who you are. We'll start with the top left on the stream, which is Avera.
I'm Avera Cosplay. Hello.
All right, next up, we'll go with Cowbutt. Oh, Regan.
Muted.
Darn it. I have a mute button on the microphone, and I'm like, well, I like doing that instead of clicking it, and then I continuously forget that I've touched it. But I am one half of Cowbutt Crunchies cosplay who is supposed to be the better one at technology, but is in fact not. Who's the other half?
Oh, I'll go. I was waiting for somebody to call me. I am Sko, and I'm the other half of Cowbutt Crunchies, and my microphone works, so.
And our last two.
Hello, we are Pros and Cons Cosplay. I'm Con, the younger half of our twin duo. I think my name says Avera Cosplay, so maybe I'm Avera today.
Ah, technology.
I'm actually I get to be pros and cons today. It's like a dream come true.
Good luck, enjoy. I'm
It's
pro
funny, I can-
Avera's other half of Pros and Cons Cosplay, and super happy to be here.
It's all right. I'm good at being able to just adjust things on the fly like that. This is what happens when you mess around a lot during COVID and have a fun period of time where you get to do online costume contests, because if something happens, you can adjust it on the fly. So I'm Pat. For those that don't know who I am, I'm a contest organizer. I've been doing this for 15 years. You Cowbutt, Avera, Pros and Cons, like you guys see them on the stage judging you guys. They're outstanding. I'm the guy behind the scenes. That's how I work usually, until I have to host a costume contest. But we're here tonight to talk about the do's and don'ts for costume contests, because there's been a lot of chatter recently about competing, what you should have in the judging room, about what you should bring, what you should do, behavior. For judging, there's a lot of talk on how people should judge, and just all the little inner workings with that. And even organizationally and hosting wise, there's been a lot of talk on that recently about people a bit upset with people on how they organize it or how they host and say things on stage. So we're here to talk about all that tonight. And the best way we could do this is to kick things off on the right foot, which is what a good majority are here for, and that's the competition side, the competing. So I'm going to let you all talk first, because for me personally, me just talking, like, I don't compete. I've competed a couple of times, but I'm the guy behind the scenes. So I'll let you all start off with that discussion first. We'll start with Regan.
Oh, cool. Thank
He's
you.
honest.
As I pull up my notes. Yeah, so this session, if we're talking about various do's and don'ts, I think people whenever anyone asks, hey, what's something you should never do in the judging room? I'm just going to start off right off the bat and say, when you come into the judging room, my biggest piece of advice is that this is your time to brag. This is your time to shine. This is your time to tell us all about what you love about your costume. What you don't want to do is tell us what is wrong with your costume, because you've been with your costume constantly over the last however many months, however many hundreds of hours. Things that you think, oh, that looks awful, I didn't do that right, I messed that up. That may be things that don't even ping your judge's radar. And even if it did, why do you want to take up time talking about it? So I think my biggest piece of advice is don't ever talk anything about negatively about your costume. Just talk about the positives.
I'll say, I think when you're competing, it's so important to read the rules before you get there. I think always get clarity. Even from year to year, contests can change. As we've seen, Crown, for example, just changed their whole kind of locational setup just a little bit ago. So you can't always rely on the data from previous years for when you're competing. So even if you've read it, we say this jokingly, but like also serious, read it, read it a second time, print it off, read it to yourself as a bedtime story, like whatever you have to do to make sure that you're really clear on what the rules are. And then if you have questions, ask. There's nothing worse than spending all this time on your costume only to try and submit or to try and get in and then find out that your costume didn't, meet the criteria. Or if there's an unclear criteria, ask the contest director how to manage that. Again, the rule piece is kind of the game before the game starts, if you will, is kind of understanding what your expectations are before you get there. And if something seems wild, you know, figure that out before you get there, because you can kind of try and mitigate some of that. I think a lot of competing, frankly, is mitigating your own misery. And, there's going to be stress. There's going to be things that happen. And the more you can prepare yourself before you get there to kind of give yourself some leeway and calm before the chaos, the better. And the best way to do that is to know what you're getting yourself into before you get there.
Because every contest is different, right?
Yeah.
Like there's,
exactly.
I know I feel like everyone's like, oh, I want the standard rules here. What should I do every single time? What's the absolute 100% answer? Will I get points on this? Will I get points on that? Is this allowed? And like, to your point, no one knows because every contest is different, and the only way you know is to read the rules. I think like a shocking amount of people don't actually read the rules ahead of time.
I
Like,
know
Pat, I
every
know
rule.
you tell me.
Like I memorize them all.
Right. Yeah.
Is there a
So we're-
rerun? Is there?
Well, I hear this
Yeah.
from organizers though, that
Yeah.
so many folks have questions that are oftentimes actually answered in the rules, right?
I would say about
That was
99% of the time, the questions that I get asked, they're already in the rules and regulations. And you just jump right over to that, read it. And if you need a little extra clarity, email the organizer. I'm one, if you email me, I'm going to respond, snap of the finger as fast as possible.
The one thing
I
I
feel
always
like one of my biggest pet peeves for contestants is that they always ask the judges about the rules. Like,
Yeah.
I shouldn't say pet peeve, but I'm like, why? They don't know. They have no clue. So ask the contest director what is going to happen at that show, because I look at like the judges is there to just judge the costumes and ensure that they, pick the best costume that's supposed to win. The organizer is in charge of making sure the ship doesn't sink, and that everyone gets to their destination. And they're the ones that are sort of in charge of enforcing those rules. The judges have nothing to do with that. So it's really, I think, important for judges to direct their questions to the right person, to avoid, either being misled or just not getting the answered correctly. And they could get their answer oftentimes a lot faster if they just go to the correct channel.
I can't tell you how. It's probably like 6 times a con when we're judging that we wrap up in judging, and then the contestant turns and is like, "So where should I go for show?" And it's like, I don't know. I have my schedule. It's different from your schedule. Go talk to the coordinator. Go ask the coordinator.
I will tell you nonstop. I send out 2 emails usually, and they'll tell you exactly where to go and what time. And I will get asked almost every judging session, so where are we meeting up? Where do we have to go? And I'm like, oh my goodness.
yeah.
I mean,
I think that goes right into like, oh, sorry.
Oh no, you
Sorry,
can go.
Oh, thank you. I think it goes right into managing your own misery. Like, you're going to be nervous, you're going to be stressed, perhaps it's a new venue. And so if you're only reading the rules once, or only reading the email once, or not giving yourself like a schedule that you've written down and put somewhere that you're going to see it, you're going to show up and forget every single thing you've read and known to be as a human being before you get there. So it's so critical to read the rules, but then also do the multiple reading and then put them in a place that you're going to be able to access them for that information. Because it's true. I agree as a showrunner, like, I don't know how many times I answer the same question over and over again. And, you may have read them once and you may have read them, twice, but that minute of stress and panic, know yourself, you're going to forget stuff because you're stressed and panicked. So do yourself a favor and just get it memorized.
My like theme for most of my advice to people is know thyself, whether it's what you can handle as far as physically with a costume. You don't want to have some sort of hospital emergency on stage and then all of a sudden Pat freaks out. But no, like knowing what you can handle, knowing what your anxiety levels are, how many alarms do you need to set, how many times do you have to, kind of manage that. Knowing whether or not you're the kind of person who can compete. Like, competing isn't for everybody. I think a lot of people who end up in these like kind of, drama points about sportsmanship are just really, at the end of the day, people who are just too attached to themselves to be able to handle that environment. And that's okay. Just know if you're not a good speaker, if you're going to be nervous in the judging room, kind of like getting ahead of a lot of that stuff, because judges are people, and we are not there to see you we mess up. Like, we're not rooting against you, right? So like, if you come in and say, I'm a really bad public speaker, please help me, every judge that's worth their salt is going to be like, we got you. What's your favorite part? You know? But like, knowing your who you are and what you can take, and if it's for you, it's not for like, I think it's just assumed that if you make really elaborate costumes, you should compete. I think the first question is why, and is it for you?
I think over the past couple years, probably, definitely since COVID, well, honestly, even before COVID, there's been a kind of mindset that, oh, if I have been cosplaying for several years and I'm not getting judging gigs, that means that I am an unsuccessful cosplayer. If I'm not winning contests, I'm not a good cosplayer. If I'm, not doing this and this and this means that I am not succeeding. Or I'm not teaching, and that means that I am not succeeding. And I think that's just such a falsehood, because cosplay is so vast at this point. And all of these things that we've been mentioning, those are different skill sets. Just because you win contests doesn't actually mean that you'll necessarily be a really good judge, and vice versa. Doesn't mean that you could teach panels. The example I always like to tell people is that I like competing. I enjoy it. I have a super fun time doing it. Scone hates competing, has only competed once, and that's because I made her do it. But Scone is the better judge than me, because Scone just has that kind of temperament and skill set that's just really incredible in the judging room. I judge a lot, but I will fully admit that she's better, even though she doesn't compete. And I think it's important to think about that and yourself as a cosplayer, and what part of this hobby actually makes you happy. Because if it's not competing and it's not being on stage, don't do it. Go do something else.
You're gonna be miserable. Don't do it to yourself, essentially. Because no prize in the world is worth making yourself miserable for an entire convention and months leading up.
Well, also, and if your only goal, and I'm sure everyone will want to get into this, but like, if your sole and only goal is, I'm gonna go in and win my prize, you're gonna have a bad time when you don't win the prize. And when you have a bad time, it's gonna be obvious, because most people are not fantastic actors. And when you're actively not having a bad time and acting like a poor sport, people do notice that. And this is such a community hobby, and I think that is not the way most people want to be seen by others. So I think thinking really hard about if you are like emotionally ready to go to a contest, and thinking, am I still going to really enjoy myself and have this awesome green room experience and meet friends and get to show off my work on stage and still be happy even though I don't win? That is the best headspace to try and get into before you push yourself really hard.
You have to know your why, right? Like, it could be as simple as being an attention whore. Like keeping on stage.
That's valid.
Valid.
That's totally fine.
Yeah. I think it's like, it doesn't have to be some crazy altruistic why. Everybody says because of the green room, and green rooms are fantastic. But I mean, honestly, I just want everyone to look at what I did and tell me how pretty I look, right? Like,
show off your stuff. That's
right.
Totally
Like,
fine.
but know what your why is, right? Like, set your expectations. Listen to us. I've lost way more than I won. I could, if I had a list of all the times I lost, it would have been like taken up like the entire intro video. So like, understanding that, like, I do it because I want to compete against myself. I compete with my other fellow competitors, but I'm there to, like, I want someone to tell me if I did good, right? Like, figure out what's driving you, because it's hard. That's the other thing. It's really hard. It's a hard day. Your friends are going to be having fun. You're not. The night before, they're going to be out at the after party. You're not. I mean, like, it's a lot, right? Like, it's physically demanding and emotionally and mentally demanding day.
I just had somebody say in the chat real quick, the best piece of advice that they've been ever given is, statistically speaking, you'll never win an award. There's always way more competitors than there are awards, and that's okay. And it's horrible. That's 100%, yeah.
Maths, right? Like, there's 50 contestants and, like, 10-ish awards maybe at a really big show. So statistically unlikely. And I think there's something to be said too about it's okay to feel your emotions. Nobody's expecting you to be like, oh, I didn't win the award. Let me just shout sprinkles and be happy and giggly and all that at the end. That is okay to be upset that you lost, but there's a difference between being disappointed and then making it everybody else's problem. What I like to do is if something doesn't turn out the way that I want it, I just go get a carbohydrate, get some cheese, get a meat, get something with my friends, hang out, drink, and do party stuff with people afterward that puts me in a good mood, makes me happy, and then we can process. So feel your emotions, but you also have to remember this is one blip of time in presumably a long life that you'll have, and it's this one competition. If it doesn't turn out the way that you want it to, it's okay. Feel your feelings, but again, you don't need to make the winners feel bad that you didn't win, your fellow contestants feel bad that you didn't win, the internet to feel bad that you didn't win, and it just makes you like a bad sport.
We are kind of making it seem horrible, though. It's like you're gonna lose. It's gonna be a horrible day. It really is.
It's very stressful.
It
is, in fact, very stressful. Know what you're getting into.
Yeah. And I also think, too, because we'll probably talk about this later, is a lot of people think that winning contests is the direct pipeline to judging. It is an element, but your behavior in the green room, your behavior towards your other contestants, if you're wanting to be a judge or wanting to do cosplay guesting, that does include judging and that kind of thing, your attitude matters a lot. I've got some horror stories of people that have just been absolutely awful in the green room, and then the next day we're like, can I be a cosplay guest? So you have to sort of think about how your behavior may impact future opportunities for you.
If you compete and you're like, that was a really long day, that was super stressful, I was hustling from A to B, I haven't eaten, I'm mad, judging might not be for you, honestly, because it's just more of that, usually. It's stressful, it's a long day, your brain is fried by the end. I mean, it's fun in the same way competing is hard but fun.
We'll go more into the judging side of it shortly, because there's a lot on the judging side that I think people don't fully realize.
It's not bonbons. So if competing is too much, consider what's too much.
I really like your point about how your behavior as a contestant and your behavior in the community feeds directly into the idea of would conventions and competitors want you as their judge, because again, this is a very, very social hobby. This is not a huge community, and these judging and guesting positions, these are essentially peer positions. They're positions where you are kind of teaching and being an example for other people. You're in a position of power over other folks in your community, and so, yeah, really, ideally, if that is where you want to go in your life, your behavior as a contestant and your just behavior online in general should hopefully reflect what people want out of their guests and their judges and someone to go to for advice and feedback and things like that. So, yeah, be upset when it's in private.
Yeah.
But yeah. I have a really hard time getting behind any judge or guests who post publicly online, who in person throws a fit or does something to make the other contestants or the winners uncomfortable because suddenly, this is now really stressful and it's sucking the joy out of our experience. Or people who encourage other people to say, oh, you should have won. That's all bad. That's all. Think about that. Maybe think about that before you post.
I've been told directly that, I'm sorry, I was really quick. I've been told directly that the reason that I got a guesting gig was because I competed the year before and I was so much fun backstage in the green room. Like, the people who are going to be getting you that position when you're competing are watching you. Both ways. So it's if you are, inspired and talking to people and happy, that will get noticed as just as much too as like being, a sourpuss who didn't get their medal.
Nothing's worse than someone if you're disappointed, but then they go on like social media, pictures of themselves crying, and then all their followers storm, and it's like, oh, the winner sucked, you should have won. That's such a bummer for everybody else who competed in the contest. Like, you're just pooping on somebody's parade at that point, and it's so unnecessary.
Because
truly,
it's no longer a oh, I feel rightfully upset, and this is like a genuine human emotion for me. And now it's more, it's actually about everybody else looking at me and telling me that I'm good. You know, it's a fine line, but it's just don't do it. Just don't post online unless it's positive. That could be the rule for everything. Don't post online unless it's positive in cosplay. Period.
And you probably
100%.
were good. Like you
Right.
were probably good. It could have been perfect. It was just something little. Like, I mean, it doesn't mean you're bad if you don't walk away with the
if
big
there's
check.
one thing I've learned through seeing all the competitions, because I get bombarded with emails all the time from people after contests, just curious on things, and we have the feedback panels for our contests, and I'm sure you guys have all participated in feedback panels as well. I know you guys have, but a lot of people don't go to the judges for feedback, and they just want to blast everything on the internet. And your score could have been like a very good score, but I always say it's the little bits and pieces that go into the costumes that win, that separate it. Because you guys could be like this, but there's just that little bit more that they ended up doing just a tiny bit differently than you did. And that's what stands out. And real quick, we got questions in the chat because it's been blowing up. The most recent one was how you know when it's time to level up from novice to journeyman, journeyman to masters. Not all competitions are created equal, and I'm uncomfortable evaluating your level by how many wins you have. Can you evaluate yourself based on where your skills are at?
I have big opinions on this. I have big opinions on this. Okay, so I see this discourse a lot where people are like, have I earned the right to be a master? I don't think that I, should be entering as a master because I'm not good enough, blah, blah, blah. The masters category is the open category. That is, I'm going to caveat it with, like, in some contests, like if you're a professional and you work in the industry, you still don't compete as a master. They may have a different level for you. But other than that, master is anybody. If you think you're good enough to compete as a master and you're okay with going against every other person in the contest, sign up as a master. Journeyman and novice are protection. They are not something that you have to earn your way up. So I just always, I don't know. I don't like to talk about, I need to earn my way there. I need to earn some awards before I can compete as a master. Like, we started as masters, I think, in competition. I think Regan entered one as a journeyman, and then
we used to compete in stupid guild things a million years ago.
Yeah, but
80s. but no, I entered Pat's contest as a journeyman and got bumped.
Yeah.
God, that was 2016. That was almost 10 years ago.
Don't stop.
Oh, I've already had a lot of talks about how long things have been going today with other people, so Avera.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people who feel, oh my God, am I really a master? This is so scary. But the thing is like, it kind of doesn't matter how long you've been cosplaying or how many awards you've gotten, because again, there are people who just simply don't compete, and that doesn't mean you'll never be a master. Go with whatever you feels right. And to be honest, if you qualify for all these categories, like, you're not restricted by, again, the rules on the page that you've hopefully read. You can sometimes small cons, the level of competition is very different from a larger con. And if you're on the cusp, I think it's totally okay to enter in a higher category at a smaller con than you might at, like, a really big national scene. So it's kind of what feels right to you. When in doubt, always enter lower. If you really, oh God, I don't know if I'm journeyman or I'm master, we can always bump you up if we feel that you deserve to be a master or be awarded some kind of master award. We cannot bring you back down. So when in doubt, ask the coordinator or enter lower with a caveat, hey, you can bump me up if you want. The other thing I will say, and then I will shut up because I've been talking so much. I oftentimes think that the journeyman is really kind of the hardest to place. It's hard to know whether you're a novice, a journeyman, or a master. To me, novice, what you should be focusing on is clean technique for one thing. starting out, you're getting those fundamentals, you're trying to do those fundamentals really, really well, even if it's just one thing. Journeyman is kind of the area where you are expanding and you're trying something new, you're getting out of your comfort zone. And then Master is you're at a point where you should be executing everything with a lot of precision, a lot of knowledge, because you have all of that wonderful knowledge and you're showing all of that to the judges. It's very ambiguous. It's hard to tell. I never go off of number of awards, but I don't know if you guys also have opinions on what you look for as judges from your novices or from your journeymen.
Well, I will say, like, going back to the question of like, how do you notice how to sort yourself? I always suggest that you ask the convention at the contest you were trying to compete at, like, ask the contest director, because every show has different qualities for what makes them a master, beginner, intermediate, and it changes. There's no standard. So, I've seen shows, for example, that say you need to have won, 2 awards to become a journeyman, and some that are like 2 awards still puts you in the beginner class. So I would always ask the show, and they can help you. Like, just give me your award history. I'll help you figure it out. If you won, best beginner at a tiny library con and they didn't judge your craftsmanship, does that mean you have to move to journeyman? No, it doesn't. Maybe you're still a beginner. But that is a conversation I think everyone needs to have with the show itself. I've seen too many people that just assumed that they were going to be in a lower class, and then they ended up unintentionally sandbagging, right? And then they were disqualified, or they had to be bumped down and they just weren't ready for that. So I would always, if you don't know, always ask the contest directly. And I just feel like that's like the biggest thing, because it's all over the place. And the other thing too, I've seen a lot of folks being like, well, I'm a master sewist. I sew all the time, like I sew, but I'm not that comfortable with foam work. I want to enter in a suit of armor. Can I enter as a beginner? Because I feel like I'm a beginner at foam work, right? And that's not how it works, right? Mastery is not only your ability to execute a costume, but it's also your experience with competitions and competing culture, and kind of understanding what it takes to win a competition. So even if you are not a master foam work person, like you've just not done it before, that doesn't mean that you can just move back down, because it's also your experience level. So again, just ask the director to help guide you, because again, every show is different, and you don't want to end up getting into a situation where you just made a mistake and guessed the wrong thing.
I do think as a community, though, we push people to master too quickly. Like, master is a long life, right? Like, it's going to be forever. Like, it took me 5 years to even get a win in the master level. I moved really quickly up, like in 2 years, and then I just sat there. So, expect that too. Like, as you're starting your competing journey, like, oh, I just got a best journeyman and now I'm in master, and it's like forever. But I do think there's some times where we're pushing people off of like smaller con wins or best in shows, and we're not letting them kind of grow in journeyman. I think it's kind of like this thing where these people are shooting in like 1 or 2 years, they're already masters. I think we should. It's my opinion too. Like, either have another category that's above master, right? So if master's the open level, then have, the category for like professional or whatever you want to call it. Because I do see a lot of masters get very, like, the first 2 years of master, they start to get really like kind of beat up, right? They turn around and all of a sudden Cowbutt Crunchies is standing behind them and Ginoza in line, and they're like, oh, this is great. I mean, either they weren't really ready for masters, or there has to be maybe something else, and it's really just for those people to nurture them to keep going, right? Like, and not get kind of beaten down. But that's kind of like a hot take, I know. So
Well, I think.
No, I think. Well, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
I think
No,
that when we
you
think
go.
about master, there's some philosophy here, right? That kind of means 2 different things. One, you as a human person, your mastery, if you will, of a specific skill, and then how you are being categorized in that specific con. And sometimes those 2 things are at competition with each other. The best and worst thing about cosplay competition is there is no standard, right? So best in show at the library con is still who's the best costume that shows up. The best person at, crown, best is who has the best costume shows up. But they're completely different communities of people. So I think we'll talk about show running later on, but it is up to individual showrunners to understand their community. If you know that you have a community that is full of people who are super, super high skill level, then maybe you change your master's requirements to get in, right? If you know that your people are kind of more at that, like, a lot of library cons, and there's nothing wrong with library cons, I want to add, but like maybe it's a super kind of just casual thing. Maybe you change what that looks like to get into some of those skill sets. But I think it's really tough, because I think people assess their own ability to do a thing with the way that the show illustrates what that means. And those, like I said, those two things aren't necessarily always congruent. There's a show that we judged a few years ago, and it was 8 awards to be considered a master, right? And that's 10. It was 10, yeah, 10. Something. It was some really high number.
I wouldn't be
And
a
only, like,
master by that standard. What?
I know. I was like literally 3 people in the
There were
region.
2 of us. That was it.
Yeah, there were 2 of us. That's right. There were 2 of us in the masters category that even qualified to get in. I was like, this is a lot. So, and I think it just depends on the showrunner has to know the community. The showrunner has to know what's going on. And then there's other shows where you just have to have competed before, or maybe you kind of know how to sew. Boom, you're advanced, right? So, I think there's 2 elements of this. When you're assessing your own individual skill level, am I a master? Think about your own individual ability to do the skill, right? Are you able to do this well? Are you able to do this successfully? And then look at what the show is asking you to do. I think in the scramble to create some sense of standard in a non-standardized world, people have relied on award count. Obviously, that's not always going to be the case. So I think you have to have those conversations individually. But the award piece wasn't it was an attempt to create a standard, frankly, an standardized process. So just things to think about, when you're entering. It's a time.
So real quick, I've got a question in the chat. This comes from Silhouette. I would love to hear people's thoughts about more specialized techniques becoming more and more common within contests, especially large ones, and how that ceiling is being pushed higher every year.
Craftsmanship ceiling is being pushed. Yeah, it's not even just specialized, just craftsmanship in general has gone. I mean, Regan and I talk about this all the time. We've been cosplaying 20 years, and from what we started, what was winning contests when we started, the average 12-year-old is showing up and stuff that puts that to shame. The high-end craftsmanship competition in the world now is insane. It is. And people are always like, somebody's like, oh yeah, I'm going to weave my I spun my own yarn to weave my own fabric. It's an arms race. It's a Cold War.
Tanning your own leather, and what was something? Oh, you grow your plants to make your cape, right? It's just like, wow, I don't even know where to start.
There's so many resources.
Yeah.
Why not? If you can dream it, you can learn how to do it nowadays. And the culture of, I see something, oh, I want to try and do that. And I can, because there's a YouTube video to tell me how to do it. And I have access to all of this equipment that we know that was so much more difficult to get 5, 10, 15 years ago. It's all accessible at this point if you're willing to put in the time and the effort. I will say here we have even more access to things than like when we go and judge contests in other countries. A lot of times you see very, very, very different types of costumes being brought in solely because of the types of materials and techniques that are commonly available there. But here we kind of have it all, man. And so you kind of see all of it in contests.
I have a spicy.
Comments. But
No, go ahead, because I'm going to derail this.
I was just going to say, I think one of the pieces on this topic that I see discourse about is, do I have to weave my own fabric in order to win? I mean, maybe. To be clear, you don't have to do anything. And I think it's a struggle with people who don't kind of have the competition brain, right? You don't have to do anything other than following the rules. That's the only thing you have to do. But because the standard is getting so high, we're getting higher degrees of skill. We're getting more levels of expertise in things people could only dream about, 10, 15 years ago. So no, you don't have to weave your own fabric, but I do think that there's definitely a place for it. And I think there's a lot of discourse about it because people are like, I don't think it's fair that I have to, smelt my own iron in order to win a contest. But I mean, this is the reality is people are getting more and more talented at stuff, and that's who shows up at the contest. So
there's something that feeds into sometimes. And I don't know if y'all see this when you judge, which is something we like to call making things for points.
Point scrubbing. That was what I was gonna. That was my derailment.
Yeah, and it's one thing if you as a contestant are like, dang, I want to learn blacksmithing. I'm gonna learn how to smelt my own stuff. I'm gonna learn how to do my blah blah blah, and I'm gonna slap it on a costume, and it's gonna be great. And then you make a costume based around that. You choose something based on this technique that you want to try and do, or you think that this technique would be perfect for this costume. That is very different from, I want to win this contest. I have a list and I have boxes. I'm going to do this technique and this technique and this technique and this technique, and they will add it up, and I will pull the lever on the slot machine, and out will come a prize. I don't know if y'all see this, but it's very obvious when someone is doing that. And I don't mean because of the person's attitude. I mean because as judges, a high-level judge should not just be ticking boxes on did you do this and did you do this and did you do this. They should be looking at the intention behind your work. Does it make sense that you smelt your own blacksmith stuff for this costume, or does it look like something you copy-pasted on just so that you could get more points? And Scone, this is your thing, so you could talk.
This was what I was gonna say. Is I listen. I love a good niche technique, and if you come in and you're passionate about that niche technique, and you're like, oh, the character lives in the mountains, so they wouldn't have access to plants, so that's why I had to learn how to tan my own leather because there's only animals. If you can explain it and make it sense either in the context of the story that the character's from, or you're doing a historical thing, or there's some kind of context for it. But when you're coming in,
looks like it.
Yeah. Or, the game developers are idiots and they put velvet text, I zoomed in so it was this big, and despite the fact that it's armor, you can clearly see it's velvet. So I did that. Also totally valid. But if you come in and you're like, oh yeah, I made this full suit of armor that I fight in, and then I did gold work all over it, and it's like, why gold work? And you're just like, it took 900 hours, and that's your answer? That's bad. You're not going to get any points for that.
Cosplay is also about creativity and intention, not just the finished product.
And more impressively, in my opinion, that I've seen is low-budget cosplays seem to do well if they're done at a nice level. Like somebody brought it up in the chat about
look at the
low budget.
Yeah, look at the winners. Look at the winners of who won this year U.S. crown and overall. There were some things that were done that were kind of making your own tooling stamps, I think, Henshin Scrap did. But I mean, they were just really well done costumes with really, accessible techniques. They were just really, really good, leather work and beading. And it wasn't like no one was smelting, no one was doing ancient Eskimo snow dyeing techniques, right? There wasn't that kind of thing, and it was just good, right? At the end of the day, I love a good I slaughtered a lamb, and it's like, wow, okay, but at the same time, is it clean? Does it look good? Does it look good?
Not even the most common. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say the most common when I see the point farming argument made is whether or not you use store-bought patterns or if you made your own patterns, and again, it comes down to the execution. Obviously, if you have drafted your own patterns and they look good, yes, you will get the additional points for drafting your own pattern. But if you can come in and you say, I drafted my own pattern and it doesn't fit, then you don't get extra points for doing it wrong, And I think, again, I am a person who loves crafting. I love learning a new technique, even if it's wild. That is what makes my brain tingle. It makes me very happy. But if it doesn't make sense, or if it doesn't look good on the costume that you're presenting, you don't get those points. So
I
yeah,
think it's
if you want to
for armor, though. I expect for armor, though, I expect you to pattern your own. I can tell if it's a camo-y full armor set, right? I expect an armor maker at the master level to be drafting their own patterns because armor's just a little bit different.
It is,
or
but I guess
making their own files.
Would you say that if everyone that showed up to the master's category that had armor, none of them drafted their own patterns, you wouldn't award somebody it's because they didn't?
No. I'm not saying that. No, I'm just saying I think that the patterning, seamstress patterning and draping skill sets and tailoring skill sets to me seem a lot more, patterning your own armor is, I think, a little bit more of a common, maybe it's just common,
I will real quick state that chat is loving the reaction that both Regan and Scone had. So we got to hear from you guys because they want to hear it.
It's because whenever this is mentioned, both of us have the exact same brain thought, which is the exact same story of the flashback that we judged, which I will let you do because I've been talking.
Okay. Yeah, we're both having the exact same flashback, and a group came in and they were novice, so like we were, you know, judging them as novices, and it was like none of this, all of the seams were diagonals, right? And they weren't supposed to be.
They're like S's.
They were like S's.
center back
I
was like
truly
this.
don't understand how some of it went together. And bless her, bless this lady. Then this was like a decade ago, so I don't feel as bad about it. But she was like, I patterned it all myself, and all I could think in the moment was like, you shouldn't have. Like, truly just
And this goes back to the rush to become a master, the rush to do all of these different techniques and do these advanced techniques. And you don't have to rush. It's more important that you as a novice or as a journeyman take the time to learn the fundamentals, the basics. How do I use commercial patterns? How do I understand how the body and the garments go together? And then as you work your way up and learn more, then once you have those foundations, you can start drafting. You can start drafting your own armor. You can start off on gold work after you have a handle on embroidery. Don't necessarily rush for the techniques or rush into things that are competitive in the Masters category before you're ready for them.
And I
not gonna
did
get you
it.
points.
I used to do it. I had this horrible embroidery. It was like on like a stretched a jersey, and it was like glued onto some foam just so I could say I had embroidery. Like, I've done it. Like, this isn't something that we haven't done. Some of us haven't done, but like, I made my wings move. Why? I want
Because it's cool.
Because they're moving. Look, there's wires hanging down, but it moves. You know, like, so it's this. But I can tell you that the cleaner, better executed thing is always win.
Hey, what's the worst thing everyone's ever made?
that was trying to be good.
Not competition. Just what's the worst thing you've ever made in cosplay that at the time you were like, this is right. This is the right way to do it.
My Shira sword was completely flat. Like, it didn't have. It looked like I had like cut it out of cardboard, but it was foam. I didn't Dremel like an edge into it, and it was like not rounded at all, and it was literally like a paper sword. But I was on stage, just throwing it up there like power of Grayskull, and yeah.
Here's something for you guys. About 14 years ago, making Thor shoulder pads with actual football shoulder pads, and putting foam over it, and not realizing that I shouldn't have to be sitting in the sun in a car ride down to New York Comic Con.
I was gonna say, like, using existing shoulder pads and putting foam over it seems like a really valid, not, you know, like if a novice came in and said, "Oh, I didn't know how to do this, so I'd be like, "Oh, good problem solving." But yeah, no, the light, the sun.
Long time ago.
That's where you messed up.
It looked good until it hit the sun.
The thing is that, but you're solving a problem. The problem is this costume, this character, and portraying it. And there are a lot of problems depending on the character. You know, some don't look human, some don't move very well. You know, you're solving problems, and so, you know, think about it that way. Why this was the problem and this is how I solved it is really the core of what's going to elevate you. You know, like Regan said, is intentional decisions.
I want bad costumes from the twins.
Oh yeah, so many. God, I think my worst costume several years ago. I thought to myself, I'm gonna make a Marlboro from Final Fantasy 12, and I'm gonna be able to sit inside it so that I can like roll around as this creepy, like horrible demon plant. I made it in my house. It was miserable, like the worst. It was one of the few times I'd worked with foam at that point, so it was a disaster. It was just spray paint crackle, terribleness. And then when I finally finished the head, I realized I had created no way to transport it and couldn't get it out of my house. I would never self-play. It was awful.
Through the door?
Yeah, I couldn't fit through the door. It was that wide because I'm 6 feet, so like I was like, in order for this to be proportional, it's got to be huge. And then it was not wide enough to get through my little apartment at the time. Struggle. Didn't even make it to the show floor. That's how bad it was. Tough. Rough.
Remember that. Oof. It was okay. It happens. You have one. Mine were wings. I think everyone has a wing horror story. I bought really cheap actuators, and they were like refurbished, and then I had to do the whole have them move and all that. So I followed a tutorial, asked my dad, who's an electronic technician, to help the children of shoemakers go without shoes, because none of that came down into our genetics. And it was really bad. It was a huge failure. I caused sparking backstage. The batteries like were leaking acid at one point in time. I had to completely redo them 2 or 3 times. Like I was like ugly crying the con. Yeah, it was. Everyone has a Ring horror story, so I would like to redo them one day to redeem myself, but it was brutal.
I thought you were going to be like, oh yeah, the stroke was so slow and the wings were so slow. It was so bad. That is so much worse than I thought it was going to be.
I mean, that was also a problem, but no, the sparking and the batteries were the bigger issue here. I didn't even get done with the actual fabric part of the costume. I was sewing it in the hotel room. Like, I had brocade that was unhemmed. Like, it was a whole mess.
So we got another question in the chat. This one we haven't touched upon yet. If you choose a character, not an original design, but want to be creative and embellish the original screen version with some of your own ideas, should you classify it as original?
It depends on how. I feel like it depends on how far you're going. If that's my view. If somebody comes in and from 20 feet away, I'm like, oh, I know exactly who that character is. Like, it all looks correct. If I need to look at you or I need to get up closer to see your like embroidered snakes and then be like green, black, snake, Loki, then it's more into original design. So I feel like it's a spectrum.
If you're changing the silhouette, then you're pretty clear into original, I think. And that's your own design of the outfit. But if you're taking, I think the silhouette is where the line is for me, because if you're just adding to the silhouette, then you're embellishing. Because that's essentially the original canon's design that you're like adding on top.
But check the rules of the contest, because a lot of different cons judge accuracy differently, and different cons have actual rules for this.
And some cons don't allow original design at all. So check the rules.
Or original characters for some. I do it with Masters of Cosplay. I let it happen because I want people to show their creativity. But there are a lot out there that it needs to be something that is actual. All right. I think we got a couple of more things to cover into competing before we jump into judging, because we've gotten a lot of people inquiring about judging. Elitism. We touched a little bit on that, but I think we should go back into that because, yeah.
It's not as rampant as you think it is. Like, I think a lot of people who don't compete think that, everybody backstage is rude and nasty, and we're all like, gonna, what is it, strip tease each other, like push each other down the stairs. Not strip tease, it was showgirls. Like we're gonna we're all out to get each other, and it's really not. I've never been gatekeeped. I could walk up to pros and cons and be like, how did you make that? And they're gonna tell me, or they're gonna compliment you. I've never felt so like inspired by people and welcomed by people as the crafting people and the maker community. Like in general, it doesn't matter how high up you are the chain or just starting out. Like, for the most part, like everybody is. I mean, of course, there's like bad apples, right? Everybody has experiences, but for the most part, as a generalized community, I don't think it is what you think it is. Like I think it really isn't like the gatekeeping, cattiness. Like it's a lot more. Oh my God, I love this. I hope you win. More.
I totally agree. I think just competing is just one way to cosplay. I think people who don't compete think that like, oh, this person won an award, that means that they're the best cosplayer in all the land. And like, it's not really like that. It's just this person won this costume contest this particular year, and that's great. I think people who act, high and mighty or like elitist, those kinds of people, as you said, Avera, are everywhere. It's not so much an issue of the act of competing. It's just those individuals who are poor sports and not great to be around. So I think if you enjoy competing and enjoy the glory of awarding and showing off and being fun, there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't make you an elitist. It just means that you enjoy cosplay in that particular way.
People who are jerks were going to be jerks no matter what. If it wasn't craftsmanship, it was going to be their Instagram numbers, or I don't know, just who did their nails, or they were going to find something to be weird and petty about.
Totally agree.
You know what? I would think that most of the bad behavior comes from people, tournament and beginners. I don't see as much in the master class. And I think that's just because at a certain point, especially if you've been competing for a while, you just know the way that the game works, and some of your, everyone always wants to win, right? But I think that after you compete enough, you sort of understand how the game works. And then I also see it online. There are people that either don't compete, there are people that their friends didn't win, there are people that feel like they were slighted in some way. It's like the peanut gallery, and then it just like gets a snowball effect. So that's why whenever something dramatic happens in the cosplay community, I'm like, y'all chill out. This is like really one incident, and it has made everybody upset. And then you have think piece after think piece after think piece, and then everyone seems to think this is how everyone's doing it. That's not really the case. It is new people and people that already have a chip on their shoulder. So I think if we nip this in the bud and just like start off before you start competing, just be in the right headspace about competitions, you will get rid of the elitism and the saltiness. But it's not that often. I think it definitely happens. I'm not going to say they've never run into a salty person or an elitist person or a really rude person backstage. Even rude, like people are going to be rude if you meet enough people, right? Just by the law of like that's math. But I don't think any of us would keep competing if it was by and large our constant experience with just having to deal with rude people and disrespectful people all the time. I think personally, like a lot of my strongest friendships are fellow competitors or people I've met in the green room. I've learned so much from other people that are out there. And yeah, there's going to be one or two bad apples, but it definitely doesn't spoil the whole barrel.
And we all want to win, but it doesn't take much to be a good human being and be happy for your friends, right? Like I've rooted for everybody except for Pat. But I mean, I've rooted for everybody in here. I rooted for you. I've cried when you won. I've been excited for you, And if we were competing against each other, that doesn't mean I was excited to win or to lose, but I wasn't the best. That feeling of like, oh man, doesn't outweigh the you did it, and there's a lot more you did it, I'm so happy for you, than there is like I should have won in my experience. And when it does, like you said, it's usually from somebody who it's their first time competing. um you know because you don't know what you don't know. When you're a novice, you're like, oh my god, this is amazing, I made everything on here. And you're like, yeah, I made everything from scratch, and you think everything is amazing, and you look at that and you're like, it's just a skirt. You just, because when you're a novice, you don't know what you don't know. And now as a master, you're like, yeah, that's not just a skirt. That's you know hand dyed from snow, right? Like, so I think that a lot of ignorance or inexperience fuels that, like, I don't know what I'm saying, fuels that.
I think there most definitely is elitism amongst masters. I have seen it, but I think it takes a slightly different form. And I think elitism from people who have been around the block or people who are trying to catapult themselves up in terms of notoriety, that elitism takes less of a form of, I should have won, I'm throwing a big fit backstage because I just don't understand, and more of a form of, I'm not going to talk to anyone who's not worth my time. I'm only going to rub elbows with the people who I think are going to win or the famous people. And that is what I see a lot of times in terms of just general cosplay elitism from masters. And it's still a very off-putting attitude. It's not incredibly common. It's not incredibly common in contests or just in cosplay in general. But, it does happen. And my advice is just, these people exist, like everyone has said, and don't let it ruin your good time. Go to a different part of the room and ignore them.
My mom always said you're defined by how you treat somebody who can do nothing for you. And I think it's you can see that. I will agree with that, because when you see somebody who does only talks to the people that could do something for them, it speaks volumes. When the little novice is sitting there trying to talk to them and they don't want anything to do with them, the people notice that. I do. I have noticed that.
Another question that we've got. This is for the whole panel. This is from Anari's Disaster. With regards to the idea of fast fashion bleeding into the cosplay community space, that's fast cosplay, multiple cosplays in a short period of time, and trying to reduce unnecessary overconsumption, how would recycling or upcycling materials, parts, etc. from cosplays passed into a new costume be accepted in a competition space?
I'll say something super, super, super quick. I do not think that cosplay fast fashion really applies to people who are competing in craftsmanship contests or are hand making all of their outfit. And I kind of find it frustrating when cosplayers get dunked on for being wasteful when they are spending a year making these costumes. Like that is not what fast fashion is. Fast fashion is a different problem in the cosplay community, which we can also talk about. But just as an aside, I think it's kind of unfair to dunk on people who are spending all of this time making one single outfit and just kind of knock it off like, oh, you're being wasteful. Oh, you made a muslin mock-up. That's so wasteful, when you're on Shein buying 5 outfits a month. Like, it's just...
Or you're buying 6 costumes on AliExpress that you wear for TikTok videos and then throw away.
That's different from the upcycling question, but I just throwing that out there.
Yeah, I agree. I think. Oh, sorry.
No, please, you talk.
Oh no, I think I totally agree. I don't think that those two things are necessarily at all related, right? Fast fashion and then cosplay competition. I mean, there's ways that you can recycle old pieces from costumes into a competition. One, make sure you're looking at the rules to determine what that looks like. But I mean, I've taken apart a petticoat to use for my mock-up fabric before, because I was like, I'll never use this petticoat again. I have the fabric here. Why spend the money? But I don't think that those two things are in any way kind of related. Kind of as Cowbutt Crunchies was saying, it's totally different spending hours and hours on one costume than spending a ton of very little money on lots and lots of pieces of product and then throwing them away later. Usually a labor of love, usually in making your competition.
Now that said, if you want to upcycle pieces, and again, the execution is there, great, awesome, that's fabulous. Or like we made some last unicorn costumes, and like all the fabric that went into my big patchwork blue coat was like stuff that was just left over from previous costumes. I was like, oh, I'm gonna use this to clear out some of the extra fabric that I've been hanging on to forever. But it was a strategic choice to do that, as opposed to, like, I've seen people come into contests where they were like, well, I was being very eco-thrifty, and so I just used the thread that I had to do all my top stitching, and it's like bright pink top stitching on like a like, it doesn't match, it doesn't make any sense. And it's like, well, that was a great thought, but you could have gone to a thrift store and gotten matching threads. So
I completely agree. It kind of goes along with the whole thing about, like, people think you're being judged on how much you spend. You're also not being judged on how much you didn't spend. It's at the end, the execution piece. So yeah, if I love it, that's always something great to mention. I recycled X, Y, and Z to put this costume together. It's in baubles from around my house, so it could awesome. But there's no category on a judging sheet for the most part. Some of them might have specialty awards, but there's no category that says recycled, money spent. Those aren't categories that we judge you on. But if you, again, do something unique or something interesting with some of the materials that you have pulled from something else, I think that can be really cool. But I think there's sometimes the misconception that you're going to get brownie points or extra points because you did something a little bit more. You didn't spend as much money or something on something.
There are no brownie points. It doesn't exist. It doesn't matter what you do. It's how well it looks and how great your technique is. There's no brownie points for anything.
It can go back to intention, though, because, if in your effort, like, okay, I only have this available, and so I really have to transform it somehow, and I need to do something super clever to make it really work and make it, like, actually elevate my costume. That is really cool. And that's the kind of creativity that I would absolutely point out to the judges, because that's all about the process and the innovation rather than just, well, I didn't spend money. But that can be really cool.
All right, so I'm going through the list right now just to see what we haven't covered fully on so far. I think 2 that we haven't fully covered. I think 1, Regan's got a little bit to say on this one. Build books.
Mm-hmm. I thought I was going to have a video today. I started writing it. It's like going to be 40 minutes, so it ain't going to be done this week. But I am making a huge video all about build books and what judges want to see in build books, because I don't think people know what we actually use build books for. Because everyone has an opinion on your build book can't be more than 10 pages. Your build book has to be at least 10 pages. Your build book has to be themed like a star. Your build book has to be blah, 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 blah. And, like, none of this is true. None of this is true. If your build book actually serves the purposes that the judges need it for, which is a tool, your build book is perfect. So, like, if you have a reference, if you have progress photos to prove that you made the thing, if you describe your technique as a reminder for the judges during deliberations, if you use it as a tool for you during the judging session, like if you get really discombobulated super easily, having the build book to kind of guide yourself along or show us the interior of your costume, the corset that we can't see, that's an amazing tool for you and for us in the judging room. And anything beyond that, it's just cool. It's not really supposed to give you points ever. I swear I will do a video. I have mostly written it, but I have a lot of opinions. I polled like 100 people. Some of the answers were surprising to me, but most of them were pretty much what I expected.
However, do check the rules of the contest.
Do check the rules.
Ask the
Because
organizers.
I mean, I've judged contests where having the build book was like worth 5 points, and people came in without it.
Some contests you have to submit them ahead of time
Yeah.
before the contest and stuff like that. So again, the rules. Yeah, I think it's one thing people stress about. Like, it's the thing that people really get, like, newer people get so stressed about. And it's really not what should be stressed about, or if you sink 7 hours into your build book to make a special cover and it wasn't 7 hours that you could have possibly spent on your costume, don't do that. Like, or spending, yeah.
I get it though. The thing is like, it's something you can have control over. It's like, I've made this beautiful build book and it's perfect and I made that and it's perfect. It makes me feel good. So if it makes you feel good, sure, do it. Am I going to give you points for it? Absolutely not. But if it makes you feel good, do it.
If graphic design is your passion.
Yep. If graphic design is your passion, go for it, man. Canva's really cool.
A lot of people are excited for this build book video, by the way. Getting a lot of people in chat saying it.
Hopefully it'll be good. But, like, I swear to God, I swear this started, like, I distinctly remember in, like, 2018, someone that I used to judge with would, like, post all this stuff about, like, oh, look at these amazing build books. As a judge, I love seeing these amazing build books. I love seeing themed build books. And, like, ever since then, I swear, like, it just has spiraled into this, like, insanity where people put so much pressure on themselves to make these perfect books that don't matter.
There's no correlation, right? Like, there's people who have won crown with, like, 2 sheets. There's people who have won crown with beautiful, bound, designed, well thought out books. There's people who have won with spiral notebooks. I mean, if you look at people who win, there's no correlation, common denominator, in how they do their build book, really.
Like, don't get me wrong. It can actually hurt you if it does not contain the information that we need. Like, that is 100% true. But it could be the ugliest dang thing in the world, and it shouldn't matter.
All right. The next one that I'm going to go into, and I'm going to have you guys double check to make sure I didn't miss anything. Sandbagging.
Oh, I bet y'all got opinions on this one. Do y'all get sandbaggers in your contests?
Yes, and I have to emphasize this. It's only sandbagging if it is against the rules. There are some shows out there that don't care if you recompete in a costume.
Crown.
And then it is not sandbagging. That is fine. If that's what that is the rules of the show, then it's not sandbagging. And I think sandbagging has 2 definitions. People function with both. One, if you don't know, is that if you recompete in the same costume that you've already won an award in. And 2, if you placed yourself in a lower class than what you should be for an easy win. I think the most common one we see, that I guess we can maybe talk about who sees what, but I think for us, the most common one we see is people that are recompeting in a costume that they have already won in. I would say 50% of the time it was a mistake, and then the other 50% was like, truly we're being diabolical about it. But it does happen. And, but I think the thing is too, is that there are 17,000 conventions going on in the world. There is no way that any organizer, unless this is their full-time job and second life, and they had a whole team of people researching who's entered at what contest and was keeping track of it, could ever know who's winning at what point in time. So everyone tries their best to, like, find people that may have accidentally sandbagged or to like check that before it happens, before awards are like, written out. And that's it. It's good, and we try our best, but you're not going to catch everything. Like we can't. Like we have lives, and we're human beings too. So then we rely on the community. What the most nervous part for me after showtime start is after the contest. I just wait by my phone and see if I'm going to get an email. Such and such cheated, or like, hey, I have details about this contestant, just to see if something happened. But people have been cheating since the beginning of time. I think it's a larger conversation about cheating and sandbagging and whatnot. And again, everyone just does their best to try and prevent it, but there's not a fail safe against it. Again, there's just too many contests that are happening out there. Okay,
I mean,
that's my spiel about
a lot
sandbagging and cheating in general.
a lot of the outcry is people who are like, this person competed the same thing and won again, but it wasn't against the rules. Right. Like I say, I think it's like this we policing ourselves in this gray area of what is morally correct. And there are egregious things. I mean, there's egregious people I've seen who have won multiple times at the same convention, first place in a store-bought costume, and continue to try to compete it at a Crown qualifier at MegaCon year over year over year, and then show up at DragonCon the next year. I mean, I've seen people who are egregious, and they are, but those are really rare. And honestly, like, people like the showrunners and the community, they police that. So it's more of this. I find the biggest issue is more of this gray area. Like, it wasn't against the rules, but I did win Best in Show already, and I just won Best in Show again. And is that right? And I mean, I don't know. Like, rules are rules, I guess. I don't know. I don't know the right answer.
That's why I say, like,
to that.
if you're confused and don't know, like, ask the showrunner, and then you have it in writing. So if the internet comes after you and they're like, hey, you handbag, then you have the email from the show director that's like, no, this is fine. We're allowing it because you competed at a library con where there was no craftsmanship judging, so we're not going to hold it against you. So yeah, totally agree. There's like, we try our best. Everyone, we check, all the contestants that enter, and like, but again, we don't know if there's a show happening the weekend before ours. If they won, we might not catch it. So it's really hard. But again, community policing.
Yeah, we got a few comments on this one about different things. I have Silhouette says, it's insane to blame the judges for someone cheating and winning. Judges do not have the time to research every contestant's socials, and they can't judge on anything that happens outside the judging room. There's shows that, have different rules about it being within the same calendar year. And then winning from one show and going to the next. Like, I personally, I go through and I try to do my best 100% with every single registrant for every competition that we do to go see what they had, what they registered with, and to see if they had previously won, because the rules that I have for like Fan Expo stuff all says you can't have won at a prejudged contest winning a major award, and major awards being like Best in Show, runner-up, or something that gives you cash. I'm not, if you want a judge's award, it's, I don't like saying it, but it's a minor award compared to those. So there are, people do look out there. It's just every once in a while, yeah, I agree. There's some that fall through the cracks. It's very, very, very rare. I would say I have it happen once every like 30 competitions. But yeah, it's definitely, as I've said, read the rules, see if it's in there or not. And yeah, there's a lot of talk on this going through about infamous cheaters and whatnot.
Cheating is a you problem, Pat. It's a showrunner problem. It's not like Zilla said. It's not a judge's problem. Like,
yeah.
Well, it's technically not on us. However, I will say, a good judge can in fact root out a lot of these problems. I know this is not on our docket for tonight, but like either tonight or some other night, we should do a segment called To Catch a Cheater, where we talk about how, as judges, what raises red flags, what in the build book especially raises red flags, and how do you actually kind of go down that path of catching someone who is trying to pull a fast one on you in the contest. Because yes. I do think, there are one saying that who did not get caught at certain contests, but, they did get caught at other contests, and that's because the judges are experienced enough to talk to them in prejudging and look at their book and go, really? Is that correct? And I do think there are methods to do that, and that's what makes part of what makes a really good judge.
Yeah, I was talking about like the sandbagging, like as far as like actually like, did you make this? Like, I mean, we've all had a guy in jeans say that
Oh,
he,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, we're not us. Well, you laugh. It's not just the guy in jeans though. We had someone at one of Pat's contests show up with a build book this thick. Showed up with a build book this thick. Came in, started rattling off for 5 minutes straight. I made this out of 6mm Ava foam, and then I did this, and then I covered in the perfectly rehearsed script. Bought costume.
Then we found the commissioner's Instagram, and then we sent the commissioner a message letting that person know that their customer was competing in it.
And the funny thing is,
It's
it was you two and the other judge all at the same time reveal scores, and it was all the same because you guys all picked up on it like that. But that also goes into our next category, because we spent a lot of time on this one. We're going into judging, because a lot of people have asked a lot of questions about judging, and I'm going to try to go back through to ask the questions. So if you guys have questions on judging, start asking them in the chat now while we start getting into what we have written over here. And I don't know which one of you guys wants to start first, but have at it.
Who's got a favorite judging topic?
Judging is
I like
not
all these,
about
but-
you.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, go there. That's good.
That just sums it up, really.
That's it. We're done. It's the end of the session.
done.
It's not
We're
about
done.
you. Out.
It's not about you. It's about the contestants. It's about giving Here's the thing. As a judge, we all know there's going to be 6 winners out of 50 people. There's nothing any judge can do about that. All 50 of those people can have a great experience, though. And we as judges can make that happen. That is always my goal, is like, even if everybody's upset that they didn't win, I don't want anyone to be upset about the way prejudging went. That's my spiel. I'm done.
To be seen, to be validated, to have their work validated, leaving inspired to compete again. If I judge somebody and they tell me that they want to compete again, even though they didn't win, I know that the judges in that room did a good job, right? Like, that's our job. Our job is to provide feedback and to provide inspiration, keep people going, because again, statistically, only one person's going to walk away with a big prize, right? So, feeling good, even though you might not have won, and feeling like my work means something, and that maybe next time I can work on this and it might be better. I think that's our job. Beyond deciding who wins, it's also making sure people want to keep going.
I think that, it kind of goes back to our piece of like, not everyone should be a judge. And I think if you're going into this because you want to have this power trip over these contestants who are nervous, crying, scared, throwing up because they're scared to talk to you, then judging isn't for you. Your job is to be respectful of people. And, if you're mad that you're, spending all this time and work assessing costumes at, a low compensation, take that up with the convention, or don't accept judging gigs that you feel like you're not going to be respected or supported at. But don't take that on the contestants, right? That's not their fault that you are tired, that you are frustrated, that you're upset. I mean, you can human a little bit, but I think judging is also PR. I mean, frankly, you're representing the convention, you're representing competing. Sometimes you're that person's first time someone's showing their artwork to you. Like, imagine being a scared art student getting a critique for the first time, and it's not even like you're giving the feedback to them live in the judging space. Like, it's terrifying. So if you're not prepared to deal with a contestant having a meltdown, if you're not prepared to deal with seeing a body part that maybe you weren't expecting to see in judging, and you're not prepared to, keep your internal thoughts and biases out, or at least do regular checking of those biases, judging isn't for you. It really should be about the contestants. It should be about giving them a good experience. And it should be about creating an equitable experience either. I think a lot of judges think, I've got to tell everyone they're going to get first place in the judging room. But that's not what that is either. It's really saying, like, look, I'm going to treat you with respect. I'm going to pay attention to your costume. I'm going to not have greasy fingers while I'm eating and talking and touching your stuff. I'm going to be attentive and here and present. And make you feel valued, and not necessarily that you're, saying everyone's going to win. As Scone mentioned, there's only so many awards, but you really have control over making that experience positive for people based on your demeanor and your willingness to interact with even the most scared folks.
And it shouldn't be hard. If you love this stuff and a novice walks in and they've made something for the first time and it's like, and they want to tell you about it, like, it shouldn't be hard for you to be interested in that conversation and be interested in seeing that. And if it is a struggle for you to be like, try to care, judging probably isn't for you, right? Like, I want to see everybody's stuff. I wish I had an hour with every person, you know. I want to hear the whole story about, you know, whatever, you know, what this character meant to me. Lay it on me. Let's talk. Like, if that isn't like just a natural part of like who you are, it might be, you know, might not be for you. Not saying we don't get tired.
Or hungry, but it's about, I think the bare minimum of respect is giving someone your full attention, right? So like you're not making content in your judging room. You're not, you know, calling your boyfriend, texting back and forth. You're there and you're on task is like bare minimum, honestly.
I also want to add too, like, consider when you're a judge, you're like, we're gonna use an example that's maybe won't work, but Supreme Court. And when you go to each convention, there's a new constitution that you have to interpret. So when you're in Rome, you do whatever that constitution says. If you have your own personal biases against something, let's say that there's a show and you really hate OCs for some reason, you can't take that to a show that allows OCs to enter. You have to judge those with the same criteria that the show sets. There's sometimes that shows don't have criteria, then you as judges, we need to like have a conversation with the director about that. But you can't reinvent your own criteria and your own rules at a show just because you show up. I think sometimes too we see this with some coordinators who might be a little bit shy and they treat their judges like they're gods and let them kind of walk all over the contest. But at the end of the day, as the showrunner, you're the one that has to be the sort of guiding light of that competition. You're the constitution writer in that sense. So, you know, try to be flexible about what sets of rules or what kinds of awards or what that show prioritizes, and you have to sort of bend your judging experience and your judging skills towards that. You can't go in there and rewrite the rules because you don't like them. Unless they're like really problematic, that's a whole different conversation. But if you just have an aesthetic opinion about something, you have to leave that at the door.
I love when a coordinator can tell me like what the con culture prioritizes. Like that's so helpful for me because I can come in and be like, well, based on my experience, I know, you know, blah 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 blah. But like, especially when you're doing high level judging or you're going out of the country, like international, you know, different cosplay communities value different things, and you want that community to be excited about the winner that you are giving them. And so it's helpful to have that guidance to work off of. If the please, coordinators, tell us these things.
I mean, being willing to adapt not just to the locale of the show that you're at and the level of the show that you're at, but also to the contestants is very important as a judge. Like, you know, hopefully everyone who's judging is a master, I should hope. And even though you may know the perfect way to make something and exactly how something should be finished, that is not necessarily, you know, what you should be expecting from, say, novices. Because again, it is not about you and your skill set and what you know to be correct. You need to adapt and properly evaluate and properly encourage people who are at a different skill level than you are. I have fortunately very rarely seen judges who really struggle to do this, and so they don't want to award anyone. Because they don't think that they've shown what they need to show. But the thing is like you need to consider all parts of the whole, everyone coming into the room, and kind of grade on a curve. And also encourage those people on a curve. Like, it doesn't make sense to tell a novice, well, you know, this wasn't well constructed at all. It doesn't look perfect. You should do, you know, 5 washes of a color for it to really look beautiful. That's silly. Tell them, this looked really amazing. I'd love you to work on your seams. You know, just make things accessible, make things like, encourage people at the level that they're at, not at what you are at.
I do want
Don't talk about yourself too, because I see that a lot where judges are like,
yeah.
well, when I work with EVA foam, and it's like in the judging room, and you're like, shh, no one cares. Nobody cares what you do at all. Like, honestly.
I was
like,
just going to
even
touch
in
on
feedback,
that.
Even in feedback, yeah.
So,
it shouldn't be.
as you guys see, there's the contestant feedback panels where the contestants get to go to the judges. Now, what a lot of judges don't know too is I do get contestant feedback about judges that judge them and their behavior in the judging room. So I do see it. I'm sure that Pros and Cons also has seen it as well, where you have a judge who just wasn't appropriate in the judging room. They were saying comments like you just said, where they just kind of talk down to the contestant, and that kind of also, I see that also as kind of like an elitism kind of behavior where they think that they're better than the person. It may not be coming off intentionally, but it's something that the contestants do here, and you got to really think about that when you're in the judging room with them. They want a positive experience, as you all have said. So I'm going to guess a question from the chat. This comes from Shell Creates. Question for the panel. How do judges go about judging entries of duos and groups, especially when the group consists of different levels of skills?
Hopefully the
I
contest
just take them all
has
in that.
rules.
Exactly that. Hopefully they've outlined it. I also, if they're like, yes, everyone comes in, typically they'll judge you all at the highest the level of the highest competitor in that group, and then just take an average. So that's another good tip for getting in the judging room, is to rehearse your skill, because if there's 5 of you in 5 minutes or 7 minutes or however many they allow groups, you have that amount of time to get through everything. So yeah, great. Hopefully the shows figure that out for you.
And actually, if you think about it, there's some strategy there too. Like, don't compete. It sounds bad, with the weakest link, right? If you're trying to win and you know your other partner that's competing with you may not have good craftsmanship skills, maybe you work together to build that costume. But because your scores are oftentimes average, and maybe you have a higher score than your partner, that might bring down your score overall. So, think critically when you're going to enter a competition about who you're competing with if you're entering as a group, because again, you don't necessarily get more points for having more costumes. I've seen it work the opposite way, to where one costume wasn't as strong and they ended up costing them points. So kind of think strategically about who you pick to be your partner. Also,
Maybe
pick people
they
that
finish it.
can
That
deal
will
with
finish
you.
it.
Will finish it, yes, and that can deal with you when you're like at your ugliest competition gremlin mode. You know what I mean? Like Tamara and I used to compete together quite a bit, and then we just know what each other is like, so we can kind of make concessions to deal with the worst parts of our competition, like personalities, and not everyone has that kind of chemistry. So again, think strategically about who you compete with. You can have fun. I'm not saying this to be negative. I'm just thinking these are just some of the strategies to think through when you're entering as a duo or a group.
Yeah, I'd say I'm hard pressed to think of someone we have given a major award to, where one person in a group was at a significantly lower level than the other folks in a group. It even though you are technically taking an average, when you're comparing to someone who might have done everything very cleanly and beautifully, it can get hard to justify that, even if the other people in your group weren't incredible. So I would say help that other person out, or maybe talk to them, or figure out a strategy ahead of time so that all of your skills can be put to use in the best way possible across the group.
From an advice for judges, I feel like have a strategy with you and your fellow judges for, like, I've had, if it's a duo, it's very easy to be like, okay, we're going to 2 minutes and then 2 minutes or whatever. But, you have 6 people walk in, you're going to be like, that a lot of the judging time can get sucked up in logistics. So having okay, you guys all line up. Is there one person who's going to talk? You're the talker? Okay, let's start with you, and then we're going to walk down the group. We're going to time it. Everybody gets a minute. Have a strategy going in for the judging, because the worst thing in the world is you get halfway through and then it's time. Like, it's even more important to pay attention to time when it's especially a big group.
With the groups, or the trio, or the duos and the trios, we will also warn them actually when their time is halfway or a third through, so that they know to switch to the next person.
All right, let's move on to the next question, which is another one from the chat. This is from Eden Anarchy. How do I help put contestants at ease in the green room / judging room? I want to see all parts of the costume, but how do I help the nervous folk?
I think a lot of times you'll get a sense for if someone's nervous once you've seen enough nervous, like, 15-year-olds who are just like deer in the headlights as soon as you ask them a question. A lot of times, especially with my like novices who are like, it's my first contest. Like, we'll come in, we'll be like, can we touch your costume? Is it okay that we're going to walk around you? Do you have something that you want to have you practice something, or do you want us to mostly ask you questions? And some people, have practiced a whole spiel and they want to get through their spiel. And sometimes they're like, oh no, just ask us questions. Or you can even sort of take a middle ground and prompt them and be like, why don't you start at the head and go down piece by piece and sort of give them some guidance on what they're supposed, how they can present themselves.
Another question we'll sometimes ask if people just are like, I don't know, I don't have anything, is do you have a favorite part? What's your favorite piece that you made? To give them something to kind of brag about and break the ice that way.
I think a good way too is that sometimes the contestants, you can read body language as Golan is saying, but sometimes there's ways that you can stop the kind of mental lockup that people have. So what I try really hard not to do is interrupt the contestant when they're talking unless they're going wildly off a tangent. Like even if they're talking about something, and to ask them questions in the middle of their spiel can really throw off their game. So unless we're running out of time or they're talking about something that's not really relevant to the situation, I try really hard not to ask questions and interrupt them, because that can sometimes be the make or break where the tears start. Something as simple as when they walk in, giving a bright hello, right? Like, and I think especially in the judging room, if you can be a little bit more peppy than you normally would be, like, again, you're all human beings, not everyone's like the super bright jazz person, but remember, this person coming in is super nervous, so everything is read at a much lower level when they come in. So I try and be really right when folks come in, and just kind of see and kind of gauge what's going on. Let them talk, let them get their moment out, and then try to interrupt as little as possible, just so that we can go. Because if you've been judging long enough, you don't really need them to tell you a ton, frankly, unless you're like getting on super esoteric stuff. You can kind of look and see as they're talking to figure out what's going on. Frankly, when I'm judging, most of what I'm taking in is from visual, either from what they're saying or me flipping through the progress book or whatever. So I try not to interrupt them, because I think sometimes it just really throws them off.
When
Yeah.
someone's really nervous too, they're looking to you for cues and if they're doing good. Because what's going on in their head right now is that I'm messing up. I'm not going to win. All this work was for nothing. I'm messing up. I'm messing up. If you just give them the cue that they're doing a good job, and you're like, yes, I understand, that's awesome, and just kind of get a little bit more like that, then they're like, okay. If you're just standing there staring at them, they're going to be like, okay, I'm messing up, I'm messing up. So there is a two-way street here. It is like a dialogue in a lot of ways with body language, and just making someone feel at ease is sometimes just, yeah, oh, this is great. Yeah, no, I love that. I mean, just kind of giving that positive stuff. So they're like, okay, I got this. And then by minute 2, it's like, and then I did this, and then you can feel like that tension kind of leave, right?
I'll say that some judges make the mistake of like overly complimenting the contestants to try to ease that. I think it is. I completely agree with what Avera said. Like, be peppy, give them a cue, tell them that they're doing a good job. Do not tell them they're going to win. Don't tell them how the other contestants have done. I've seen some folks do that. And
What?
not only are you potentially wrong, likely wrong, right? You've set an expectation for that contestant. So be encouraging without over promising what they may or may not get. Try and be like neutral about it. Like, yeah, you are doing a good job. You put in all this effort and time and patience to come to this contest and present your work to us. That is an amazing accomplishment. So we can celebrate that with you without telling you what your score is.
Or you could, or
Yeah.
if someone points out something cool, you just be like, "Oh, that's so cool! Oh, I love that! Oh, I love how you did that!" Like, yeah, that's factual. You might not win, but I still love it.
Yeah,
Or you're
I think
doing a
saying that
good job in prejudging, right? Like, like a good job here, like this is good, right? That's kind of, sorry.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think there's a difference between like, that's really great, or like, that's best in show material right there. Like, that's the kind of stuff I hear from people. And then what are the contestants here? I'm getting best in show, right? So I think it's just about how you phrase the joy. But I agree. I think the nonverbal, or the oh yeah, so cool, or like, that's really awesome, is a totally great way to bring in some positivity in the judging space.
All right.
I also add, I'm sorry, I'm gonna like, oh, sorry.
No, go.
I'm sorry. I talk a lot too. This one, I'm very, very passionate about judging. And like, the other thing is you have to read the room. Sometimes we're all like, as judges, and this is good to talk to your fellow judges before the judging starts, is that we're all like, let's go look at the costume. You have to like read the room, right? If the contestant's coming in and they're freaking out, it's not the best time to have the sea of judges coming in to look at the costume, right? Some of us might hold back and look at the progress book and like pause, so that way there's only 1 or 2 people that are coming in. We've had people have full on like anxiety attacks because they just don't want to have that many people in their face. And I will also emphasize, always ask the contestant before you touch them. Ask them before you get up to touch them, so that way they don't feel, pressured to give you an answer one way or another. And just to assuage that anxiety, do your best to, like, again, read the room and just see where that contestant's, like, how their body language is. If they flinch when you get up, that's when maybe don't approach it. You can do creative things to kind of figure out what you need to figure out without having to get crowd up in their space. Maybe have them step back and hold up their seams, or like point to whatever it is in the progress book. There's ways of working around contestant anxiety. And also, as a contestant, it is okay if you're anxious and don't want people touching you. That will not impact your score, as long as you can show us what it is that we're unable to see, because we can't touch your costume.
And ask to take pictures.
I also think sometimes you can just acknowledge, like, if somebody's really, they're like, because a lot of times they'll crash out, right? They'll like start and then they crash out and they're like, oh my God, I'm so nervous. And you can just be like, yeah, judging, being judged, it can be really stressful. Do you want to let's all take a deep breath? I've literally been like, let's all take a deep breath. You're doing great. Can you talk about your wig? I really like that. And kind of like acknowledge it, but then lead them into something concrete and get them, because if they just crash out and you're just waiting for them to like get it together, then it just spirals.
All right, we're gonna
And watch your face too. Watch your face too. Like, I judge with people who have very animated faces, and sometimes they're like they let loose. You don't want to ever let your face do this, like, or do something, even if it's not like intentional. That just be mindful that they're watching everything you're doing, and they're literally going through their head, going, "Oh my God, they just rolled their eyes," and like you just had a bad contact, but they think that you rolled your eyes at them, and they're gonna lose, right?
All right, I'm going to get us on to the next one because I had some ask about this. Bias stirring judging. Because I know that's a hot topic in a lot of cases, because a lot of people think that just because they're friends, that's the reason why they won. So
here's the reality, right, of cosplay, is that all of the super high level masters in this country are friends. Like, we've all been competing with each other. We've all judged each other. We've all worked for each other's contests. We've all gone drinking after con. We all know each other. So at a certain point, the really high level competition people that are at New York, C2E2 every single year, over and over and over, that's just the reality. There's a limited number of them, and they become friends. Now, good judges should be able to divorce themselves from that, because we know what good workmanship does and doesn't look like. Now, at a local level, I've seen some sketchy stuff.
I don't, if this whole like my friends are going to be biased thing, it has not panned out for me. I still do not have a C2. Like, I mean, like, yeah, it's like if that was the case, like, people would be calling it out. And honestly, like, people also say that people judge their friends harder, or that they feel like their friends are judging them harder. And I don't think that that's really a good judge. Is just judging the costume, right? Like, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. I've judged people who I'm in their, hello, my daughter. I've judged people who I'm in their wedding, and I wasn't like, fighting for them,
I think this actually, there's another question in the chat that I'm going to kind of go into, is the score sheets and why they're so important. I know a lot of judges hate them. As a showrunner, I think it's really helpful to have them, because it does force you as a judge to set a baseline. Now, if you've been judging for years and years and years and know it, right? Like, there's a level where you're just like, I know what a 10 looks like, I know what a 5 looks like, whatever. But I do think if you're, I think we lost Avera.
She turned the camera off. It's okay. We keep going. It's just going to have everybody's name all over the place. And now it's back.
Oh no, it's all good. It's all good. So I think one of the things that I like to, for new judges or people who are new to a contest, is to use the score sheets. And it doesn't have to be like, the hand of the word of God, if you will, right? Like, there's always wiggle room and flexibility. But if you're looking at a set of criteria and then assessing that specific criteria, it does help you as a judge to reduce your own personal biases, because you have a a statement of what you're looking at and how it's supposed to be. And this helps. I've had judges before, you know, who are like, oh my God, I had no idea that I was definitely preferencing people who were the sewists over the foam smiths or whatever. That's the other reason why you have a panel of judges, right? Is because you want to have a diverse set of skill sets. But I know people fight the score sheets all the time, but I love them because it does kind of force you to eliminate your own biases. Like, look, am I looking at something that's cleanly made? Am I looking at something that has, you know, I don't know, I'm trying to remember what's on our score sheets, but like, is there like a razzle dazzle element? Is there, what's that? Is this fit? You know, is this fit this person's human body, right? Things like that, because then you aren't kind of left to the wild of your own internal biases. Every human has a bias. You cannot escape it. You can do things to help yourself mitigate those biases, which I think is important self-work everyone should do. But I think relying on your fellow judges if there's disciplines that you're not as familiar with, and then use the score sheet, that helps a ton with eliminating some of those biases on the panel.
This is another video I want to make. I do think that we as a community with contests have come very far in craftsmanship biases, because now and you know, there's the pendulum swings. Needlework is hot now as opposed to armor, that kind of thing. But you know, there used to be a lot of complaints like 5-10 years ago that like, oh, no one ever awards needlework, everyone only wants to award armor, and I think people are on the whole tend to be the whole panel tends to be more fair with craftsmanship. I do, though, personally see a bit of judging bias in other aspects, and it's not purposeful. It's not mean, purposeful, I want my friend to win type of bias, or I hate armor type of bias. It's very subconscious or unconscious. And I think there's still, unfortunately, quite a bit of bias with performance. I think a lot of times the folks who judge performances are not necessarily performers themselves. And so you kind of naturally default to what was I most entertained by, and that's kind of personal. You know, I might love musical theater, I might love comedy, and then it's kind of like, well, are you actually objectively scoring based on like difficulty and execution and that and scripting and that sort of thing? So if you're not necessarily a performance person, but you get put in that situation, I think you really, really, really have to pay extra attention to be more objective about it. The other type of bias that I actually see quite a bit is bias that incorporates outside knowledge. As a judge, you should always be making a huge effort to give everyone exactly the same chance, exactly the equal opportunity. And you know, that's kind of why our prejudging sessions are locked to a certain amount of time, and people have a particular amount of time on stage. Because beyond that, you really shouldn't be getting extra information about the contestant. So if somebody comes up to you before the deliberations, either after prejudging or beforehand, and is like, I got to tell you this one cool thing on my costume, run away. Don't talk to them. Do not talk to them, because that's unfair. They're giving you extra bias in favor of them, because that's extra knowledge that other people didn't have the opportunity to give you. You know, if you saw this person in the hallway and you're incorporating, you went up and you looked at it, that's not really fair. That's a bias. If you're giving someone an award because, you know, the costume they brought in today, they have just improved so much over their journey as a cosplayer, as opposed to the first time you judged them 5 years ago, and just the improvements they've made to make what they did today is incredible, and so I'm giving them my judge's award. That's bias, because the other contestants that you looked at did not have that opportunity for you to have seen the last 5 years of their work. And that's something that I actually see quite a bit, because I don't think people necessarily think about how truly objective we should be as judges. I think Scone and I are on the really far end of this spectrum, and I'm sure there's other people who, you know, kind of counter with, well, this is still, it's not just an objective contest. There's a lot of community stuff involved and emotions evolved. But that's how I like to judge. That's how we like to go into the judging room.
Or going the opposite way with like people who are like, well, this person was a jerk last con and went online and talked about so and so and cheated at this con, and you're like, no, I don't care. Like that's not.
That's up to the coordinator to kick their butts.
That's the coordinator.
That's not
yeah,
my deal.
like that's not me.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, if somebody comes up outside of their time in the judging and they try to tell me any, like, I consider that cheating. That's essentially getting extra time. You're adding
Oh.
minutes to your judging time. I consider that cheating,
I
and
would tell the coordinator.
I have told people, like, I will, if they come up to me and they're like, "Oh, I forgot," I'm like, "Don't talk to me. This, it's not." And if they continue, like, I'll disqualify them, like, or I will take them out of my running, because I don't play. I don't think it's ethical.
Now, you are allowed to go talk. Like, if the judge is at their booth and you want to go talk to them and say hi, that is totally fine. Just avoid going up in your contest costume, or like put a sheet on yourself or something. Like, it's
Or
avoid
just
trying to accidentally give extra
Yeah.
information.
don't talk about anything that you would have been bringing up in the judging room if you had more time.
All right, let's see. I'm just making sure because we've covered some of the questions that we have on our like little bullet points. We've thankfully like covered over different other categories. Just checking. Oh, this is a big one. Personal rules in judging versus what the contest organizer has set in place. Because there may have been a situation that arose and somebody may have asked that question in chat. So, to you
This is
guys.
kind of like what y'all were talking about with your contest, right? And design.
Yes, like please, like the show rules are the rules for a reason, you know. Unless you see something diabolical, just when in Rome, do as the show says, right? I always defer to the coordinator or the director. Now, I'm never gonna say like there have been times where we've judged and I've found a diabolical rule, right? And I've asked the coordinator like, hey, I don't feel comfortable judging on this particular thing. Is it okay if we do this? But one, that happens before any of the contestants walk in. And that happens not in front of the contestants. It's not a whole like dramatic moment like, hey, coordinator, this rule is, I think that this is going to cause additional problems down the road. I think we should do it this way. What are your thoughts? And then they're kind of have the final say. If it's something that was really, really diabolical, like evil, and I would not feel comfortable judging on that criteria, then I would just recuse myself from that, judging position. But really, you cannot make up your own rules when you go in there to judge, because that show has its own culture, its own mission statement, its own types of contestants, and the types of things they want to celebrate. So again, my example that I see pretty common is like, well, I don't like OCs. Well, if this show allows OCs, then you're going to judge the OCs and you're going to judge them fairly, because that's what you were hired to do. So yeah, I have big feelings about that. Again, like, you can ask questions. I think it's always great. I have tons of questions. Sorry, coordinators that we ever talk to. I just have questions because I love to know about how shows operate, and that's fine. But again, you just can't go in with your own agenda to go and change the rules.
Yeah, there's not much else. I mean, you don't walk into somebody's house as a guest and say, "Hey, can you change your wallpaper for me?" You know, I mean, you're there to do a job, do it.
Go
I
ahead.
think a lot of people don't realize that judging is a job, and you need to treat it like a job, even if you're not getting paid or you're getting paid in a hotel room and beer or whatever. Like, there's a level of professionalism that you should be holding yourself to, with focus and respect and being nice to your coworkers and following the rules. Treat
Because
it like
it's
a
not
job.
about you. It's not about you.
I will tell you, I had one situation where somebody refused to score somebody fairly because they just didn't like the character, and it was somebody that I've never brought back for judging ever again. This was like 12 years ago, 13 years ago. Don't be that person. Just because you don't like a character, you don't like a series, you don't like a movie, don't that's not what you're there for. So, go on to go ahead.
The other thing I was going to add is, and I say this, we say this from the showrunner perspective, but as the judge's perspective, it's also incredibly stressful to walk in and then be in charge of like the operations, right? Like, unless you kind of signed up for that to begin with. There have been so many shows where, we've been very lucky to work with really phenomenal judges throughout the years and haven't had too many problems. But there's been times where I'll go to a show to judge, and the contest coordinator I have never seen the entire time, no idea who they are. And then suddenly, we're making decisions. Like, well, what does this mean? Or like, what's going on? Who's doing this? And as a type A person who also runs shows, I will take over. So help me, help you, help me. Do not do that, because I think you have to be in charge of your own ship, as we said before. So.
I think we've got probably two more questions in judging. So this was one that we had written down, which I'm pretty sure you guys will all have the same answer. Don't wear elaborate cosplays during judging that could hinder your ability to judge.
To be honest,
Yeah.
you don't have to wear any cosplay during pre-judging, and we've kind of stopped doing it unless there's no time to change between that and the stage show. I think it's totally fine to come in a t-shirt. No one's looking at you, and it's easy to move around. But I think most cons do appreciate a cosplay on stage.
It's not about you, and it could be intimidating too, right? Like if I walk in and all of a sudden I see, Regan in her crown winning, costume, and I'm like, I'm just gonna stare at that, as a novice, right? So it's not about you, or body paint, or even face paint. If you have any kind of makeup on that could possibly get on someone else's costume, don't do that, ever. It's like eating chicken wings while you're trying to judge someone,
Hey.
Or barbecue
Well,
sauce.
I think, especially with newer judges who don't have it's not about me beaten into them yet. Getting a guesting opportunity and judging opportunity is really exciting. And your first thought probably is in fact that it is about you and this amazing thing that has happened to you, and you get to do all this fun stuff. But the reality is that you don't actually have time to do anything else. So if you think you're going to put on this costume because after prejudging you're going to go to a photo shoot or you're going to go to a meetup, get that out of your head, because that ain't happening. You are probably not going to actually have time to do anything but your job if you want to do a good job. Occasionally I see judges or guests prioritize other events at the con that they want to do above their responsibilities, and as a result they end up either being late or super unfocused, or they're wearing things that are inappropriate, and that is not really what either the coordinators or your contestants necessarily want to see, and people do notice that kind of thing.
All
You
right.
want to go to a con for fun? Go to a con for fun.
Yeah, we with rare exceptions, we do not mix our fun cons and our working cons. I will never work at Katsu. I will never work at Katsu. I will never guest at Dragon Con, because those are my fun cons. And it's just impossible if you want to do a good job.
I had one comment in the chat from Cafe de Dewey. I witnessed 2 judges once who wore elaborate costumes and refused to get up from their seats because contestants should be lucky to see these cosplays. Quotes.
That's a bad judge.
Yeah.
It's a yikes from me.
That's a yikes!
And speaking of Dewey, he also had a question, which will be, I think, the last one we'll toss in for judging. Question about patterning. Cleanliness and execution aside, what's everyone's opinions on historical cultural pieces? I've had a discussion once with someone who also judges, and the group historical cultural self patterns with people who uses manufactured patterns, because these are pieces that existed before. But in my experience, historical and cultural costumes are not like your McCall or Simplicity patterns. You have to do your research in order to draft out patterns. Thoughts?
So I'm gonna divvy between historical and like cultural, because I feel like I don't want to step into making cultural garments from as a white person somebody else's. I'm not gonna touch that. Historical. Yeah, if you had to self-pattern something, and again, like, we're going to assume that everything's executed well, and you come in and you say, oh, I drafted this, and in order to draft it, I had to, go to the library and look at all these, like, textbooks, and there's only, like, 2 or 3 existent garments, and I had to, do a bunch of configure, like, that's additional work. Brag about it. It definitely is more work than using, like, again, a Simplicity or McCall's pattern. Now, if you buy a historical pattern, like, I don't give you necessarily more credit for using that as opposed to using the McCall's, as long as it looks right. Yeah, if you're doing research and you're making stuff up as a result of that research, that's additional work and effort, for sure.
Yeah, I would think of it like doing the extra legwork and going above and beyond is what elevates you and in the eyes of the judges. It's not necessarily, well, you only used a McCall's pattern, so that's bad. I'm going to dock points from you because that's not truly historical. It's not necessarily a negative thing in of itself, but if someone has gone above and beyond to truly do the legwork and recreate something, that's more in their favor, if that makes sense between the two things.
And make
Now
sure
I-
you point that out in the build book too. Like that's a case. Like if you're making like a, some sort of culturally significant, piece of, that it took a ton of research and those patterns no longer exist, and you had to do like, you might not have the time to really explain it. That's like 7 pages of a build book. Like that should be really kind of in there to lay that out because we might not necessarily have that background of what the significance of that piece is or what it took to get there. So even if you don't have enough time, to make sure you say like, this is really hard to do and not everybody can do it, and I explained it all in there at least so that we can kind of like get some sort of like sense.
Yeah, I'm trying to wrap my head around the question. I want to make sure I understand correctly too. Like the criticism, or I guess the concern, is that someone is seeing someone self-pattern something that they learned to do from a history book is the same as, someone buying a historical McCall's pattern, if you will, because someone at some point in history has made it before. I feel like I don't know. I guess kind of what other folks were saying. If you're doing research and actually pulling things that are very niche and esoteric and not everyone knows about, that's an element of work. You know, Historical though is tough because how many petticoat patterns are there out there in the world? I mean, bagillion, right? Like they're not really hard to come by, and that in themselves is also historical. So I guess it just kind of depends on what the costume is, what its purpose is, and the execution. I know, the question kind of excluded the execution piece, but truly, right? If you're trying to make X and it doesn't look like X, that's kind of what this boils down to, right? Like regardless of whether or not you researched, the proper way of making a corset and have drafted your own from scratch versus editing in a commercial pattern, I think ultimately those pieces are kind of, it's about the execution. Now, if you're like doing something really niche and cultural and very specific to your heritage and things like that, I think judges can, that comes a lot in Judges' Choice Awards too, I think, as well. Like, right, we see things that are just kind of cool thing that, it doesn't have a lot of representation or is just something that should be highlighted for that element of skill and research. I think we see a lot of that in Judges' Choice Awards for sure too. I hope I'm answering the question correctly. I want to make sure I was understanding it as I was reading it.
I kind of want to I don't think it's, well, I think it all comes down to how it's executed, right? Everyone researches their costumes before they put something out there. And I do think that what takes somebody 2 hours might take somebody 20 minutes, depending on research and how good they are with knowing the cultural backdrop. So I would personally feel uncomfortable awarding points for length of time looking into something, right? So everyone's length of time to look into something is different, and that is a learning and personal. That's a whole thing for each individual person. I think what we do like to see, if you're bringing in something that's cultural historical, your judging panel may not know what that history and culture is. So you as a contestant, it'd be really great to just come in and explain that to us. Like, hey, this particular cut, this particular silhouette is based off of XYZ culture. I wanted to bring this in, this, then, and this, then. And I think that is excellent. So especially if it's something that might not be super common, we're all pretty familiar, I think, with a lot of Western attire, which is a rant I have for another day. But for other things that are a little bit more traditional, like traditional African prints, like different silhouettes that you might find in Senegal or Botswana, we're not always familiar with those kinds of things. So please come in and share that with us. I think it would give color and give a story behind how you put something together. If the end of the day, the costume is not made well, though, and you were like, well, back in the day when the cavemen were putting together outfits, they used straw, and I just sort of tied it together, hoping it would work. That's not an excuse for poor craftsmanship, if that makes sense. So again, please share your culture with that. I love a cultural costume. I think it's really great. But your judges may not be familiar, so that might just be an additional thing you need to explain to the judges in the judging room, especially if it's something pretty uncommon.
This is a great thing to put in the build book. bring in some like great examples of your inspiration, or like real world examples of what inspired you. And then you have a great visual reference for the judges to actually see as you explain this. The other quick thing I want to point out is what we were talking about, awarding time spent doing and researching, as opposed to I used a J.P. Ryan historical pattern. Care about time. Super don't care about time. I might be alone in this, but we do not care about time. If you come in and you say, I spent 3,000 hours hand rhinestoning everyone, I don't care. I really don't. I know a lot of people like to do that, but I personally don't actually care, because I don't want to hear how much time it took. I want to look at what you made and visually understand the effort and the results, and see like, oh wow, that must have taken a lot of effort to do. If it took you 8,000 hours to sew all the hems on your petticoat, good for you, I guess. I'm not giving you points for that.
It's good for the stage walk, right? Like the audience, the audience a little wow, like 800 hours of work, and the audience is like, surely not. No one has that much time.
Think care about
Yeah.
hours you took,
Yeah.
pockets,
Yeah.
other things probably. Like just
But leave it out of
It's a human
judging.
interest story.
Make
It's human
smart
interest, right?
choices. Make smart choices.
And it can backfire too. Like if I it took me 1,000 hours to make this circle skirt, and pro goes, okay.
Well, now what
To
I would
be,
bring
right,
up,
yeah.
what I would bring up is, hey, it took me 100 hours to make this circle skirt because I ran into this crazy issue where it didn't hang right, and so here's all of my decision making to fix it, and it took me 100 hours. That is cool. That is innovative. I like hearing about that process.
But if you just took 8,000 hours because
Don't-
you're really
don't just
slow and
sell-
bad at sewing, like that's a you problem.
Or worse, when people are like, I did this in 20 minutes, like and you're like, well,
I should.
it looks like
Yeah.
you did, like you
Yeah.
made it take longer, things like
Yeah,
that.
then
Like, I did
sometimes
this
you're
in-
like, I can tell.
Yeah. So I
Have you
think
ever-
people definitely shoot themselves in that. Oh, go ahead.
No. I'm just shit posting. Have you ever been at like a normie heavy con, and someone goes on stage and they're just like, this person spent 10 whole hours making this costume. I don't know if you guys ever
You
get
do, it
those.
makes me giggle. Yes, I just like, it's so funny.
No one has that much time on their hands.
I know,
10
who could spend
hours.
10 hours? I was like, let's not talk about how long I spent watching. Like, that's just, like, let's not even go there. Yeah, so it's so funny to me. Like, the disparity of what time looks like for someone who's competing a ton versus who maybe not compete as much is hysterical to me.
I also like have no
You know what?
comprehension of time.
I wanna-
frankly.
Also true.
I want to add to it, like, this is like the kind of thing that you're preaching to the choir, right? Your judges are all crafters, hopefully, right? Master level crafters. So we know things take time, especially if you've been judging for a while or have done a lot of different types of crafting skills. You know that it's going to take a minute, or that doesn't take very long typically. You kind of get a sense for that. So don't waste your judging time telling us things that we already know. For example, I went to the store and bought fabric. You had to get it from somewhere, unless you made it yourself. Like, that's a whole different thing. But like, you don't have to spend your time telling us
Or stole it.
general
I
knowledge.
use barge cement, and I seal this with Plasti Dip. I mean, the sealing, like if you did something different with the sealing, if you put 6 layers of Mod Podge and you wet sanded it before the Plasti Dip, I mean, the things like I used glue, unless it's out of the norm or there was a reason why you did it. I used Mod Podge because Plasti Dip doesn't cure in humidity, and I'm from Florida. Like, that might be interesting as a novice. Okay, yeah, like you know what you're talking about. You made an intentional decision. But I cut the foam with an X-Acto knife. I know,
To be honest, even I made it out of foam.
yeah,
Generally, your judges
should.
a lot of times should be able to look and actually understand pretty much everything you did on your costume. So, if you need to choose what you want to explain during prejudging, it should be things that we should not actually be able to pick up just by looking at you. So, I would actually focus less on, I used these materials, I did blah, blah, I did these standard things, and more really interesting things like, what was my creative thought process? Why did I do this kind of stuff?
Right.
How did I attach these things so that they kind of fit on and I can move really correctly? Or if you are bringing in something that's unusual, like an unusual technique that you had to do, definitely focus the most on that kind of thing. Because your prejudging time should definitely be spent on things that we can't necessarily tell just from you or from thumbing through your book really quickly.
And that's why qualified judges are important, because a qualified judge who has made, who has these experiences knows how to these things are
Oh,
made.
yeah, sorry, I'm assuming that we're talking about contests. Yeah. Local contests, y'all do you.
All right,
Can
so
I add one other thing? Sorry, before we it's really quick, I promise. You have to be able to get along with other people even if you don't agree with them. You have to be able to make a call and have, objective evidence for why you choose this costume over another one, and be comfortable debating people without turning into a shouting match, without being rude, without being disrespectful. You can disagree. It is totally fine. And sometimes it's kind of like fun. Like we get to debate for like who wins what. But you have to be able to do that in a way that is professional and not going to end in anger and tears from the other judges, right? You're not always going to agree with the person, with your whole panel, and that's fine. But if you end up as enemies afterward, unless again they're being diabolical, in which case you should bring the showrunner into that to help mitigate. But please be comfortable with conflict and healthy conflict. This isn't like fighting; it's just like debating, right? And I've judged with coordinators who were like, "Are you guys fighting?" Like, no, we were all just we have to make a decision very quickly. So we're all speaking quick, but it's all professional and very, we're cognizant that other people might have other opinions. So let your fellow judging panel have their say. Let them get in questions. Let them get in their thoughts about the contestants that have walked into the room. You have to be a good, what is it? You have to be good partners. You have to have a good partnership between your judging panel.
Even if you're like getting along really well and you know these judges, you've judged with them before, deliberation's really hard. So you have to be prepared for that. It's a really, I mean, unless there's something where there's like just an obvious, like, whatever, like deliberations can be very hard, like going through things and trying to figure out who is the best. Because really, I don't think people realize is that we want to get it right. That's why it's funny to me about the bias between friends and stuff like that, because as a judge, the one thing that you want to do so much is to get it right. So deliberations, even when they're friendly, can be very intense.
I actually think that this is a great topic to talk about a little bit, which is, suggestions for how to have a constructive, roundabout conversation with your fellow judges, especially if you are not agreed. Because I think that they're, just like you said, we've heard of, fortunately, I've not experienced this very much, but, there are judges out there who, you have your opinion, and that's your opinion. How do y'all not agree? And then when that happens, what do you do? How do you resolve that kind of conflict? So if Pat, I don't know if we have time, but I think that would be a fun roundtable question.
I mean, we have time. I don't know, but if you guys have time, because we could do another one, because I think some round table conversation ones could be another one that we could do in the future too, because I'm surprised we've gone 2 hours already. But we got a lot of people that are interacting in the chat. By the way, you guys started up a pajama judging room session where all the judges are in PJs to judge everyone. So I just want to throw that out there.
I love it. Look, I'm always going to show up in showered, so but I love the idea.
But honestly, we've got time, because the organization and hosting side of it, we'll go through that real quick. So have at it. Let's go.
I would say honestly, I find that in judging and deliberations, the first thing I always try and do is ask the other judges what their opinions are. You can always start out and say, these are my top 3, but in your deliberations, at some point, you should always be asking, what do you guys think? What is your opinion? What did you think about this person? Who do you like? Because if you're not doing that, this is not a conversation. This is just 3 people stating their opinion at each other, as opposed to it turning into a back and forth that even if you're at odds with each other, you can have a back and forth and you can get somewhere and you can have a conversation. So to me, every judge needs to be able to do that.
100% agree. I think there's a way to disagree without steamrolling over others' opinions. And if you have nothing to disagree on because are talking the entire time and not like listening to your fellow judges, then you're not really listening and learning either. I think there's always going to be things that you miss. That's why it's good to have a panel. And to hear those other perspectives, especially if there's a skill set that that you're not as familiar with. Like I've done 3D printing, but I don't like it, and I could tell a good 3D print from a good 3D print versus a bad one. But if I'm on a panel with somebody who I know their bread and butter is 3D printing, I may have an opinion on what this looks like, but I'm gonna default to that person's expertise of like, is this what you've seen in your professional work that looks the most like this, right? So I think you absolutely have to ask, right, like what does this other person think? Making sure that you're creating an environment where you're not kind of steamrolling over folks, making sure that you're listening. I don't know. I've just been in so few judging rooms where people have been nasty, so I think that's been great. I think I've gotten the opportunity to judge with lots of wonderful people who get it, but every once in a while you just get a person who like thinks it's about them and they have to grandstand and it's just the whole thing. So yeah, totally agree. Just for sure.
Yeah, respecting everybody else's expertise. If you respect the other people's opinions and what they are bringing to the table and their perspectives, I think that just immediately makes everything easier. You're not saying that it's blind. If I think a silhouette is off or something, something isn't proportioned right on a sewing piece or whatever. But for the most part, it's like, okay, so tell me why this is amazing. That is usually where it comes in, right? Like it's not good, bad, awesome. It's usually like, no, you don't understand why this is exceptionally hard to do. And it's usually something like, a embroidery technique or something like that. And I'm like, tell me why this is so hard. Or, the way that they 3D modeled something. Why is this so hard? And I will do the same. I'll be like, you don't understand how hard it is to get this on foam to look like this, right? I think if we have respect for each other, then those arguments tend to kind of, be less.
Yeah, you've got to defer to the expert.
Yeah. There's been I cannot think of a time where I felt the need to scream at somebody in the judging room or like to get into an actual genuine fight. And if you're at that point, you need to talk to the showrunner because that means something else is going on. I've seen very rarely a judge who, to use Con's word, is diabolical, right? Like they are truly a villain. And in that instance, we're not talking about judging anymore. We're talking about other problems that are going to be an issue, and that's when the showrunner needs to get involved. So I think knowing when the boundaries, if you feel yourself getting to the point where you can't have a productive conversation, you need to bring the showrunner in and excuse yourself from that conversation because it is also an element of disrespect to the contestants if you're not able to focus on looking at their scores and evaluate their costumes in a respectful way with your people who are also assessing them. So.
I will say I've had to step in a couple of times during deliberations because it's like literally like it's not like heated, but it's very much a complete and utter standstill on who they want. And I think key is to also have, a judging panel across the board, like just representing all different skill sets, because that can help separate who's going to be selected as your best in show winner. Because it does happen every once in a while where it is so locked on this person or this person, and you need that one difference maker, and it's usually like a third judge or a fourth judge that's in the room.
And don't ever tell anybody that it was between you and this other person, and we went with this. Did you like? Yeah. I've seen that's like a new thing too, where people are telling other people like what was going on, right?
Do not do that. Do not talk about who almost won. Do not talk about what your other judges said in that judging room. That is private. That is unprofessional. Please do not do that.
What happens in judging stays in judging.
Because think about it if it was you. Think about it if you are walking away trying to hold your stuff together, knowing that you thought you had a really good shot, walking away without the big prize, and the judge walks up to you and says, I was fighting for you, but they went with someone else. Like, how would that feel? I
will say it's a tough situation when they come for feedback and you were fighting for them. And then it's kind of this incredible gymnastics routine to try and give them constructive feedback when you actually thought that they were wonderful. Fortunately, this doesn't happen often because I think that a lot of times judges are in fact quite aligned. But the one really extreme time that this has happened to me, the way that I tried to talk to this contestant was explaining that, every judge is different. Every judge has different things that they're looking for, different things that they loved. I told you, I explained to them what I loved, where I thought they should improve, but I really recommend that they also speak to the other two judges because they will probably have different advice. And that's kind of the way that I ended up wording it for this person. Do not tell them that you were my pick. Do not do that.
Do not throw your fellow judges under the bus. Even if like they ganged up against you and you thought they made a bad decision and you're not happy with the picks, when it comes to the internet or the contestants coming to you,
go complain to your bestie. Don't post.
Yeah, go complain to your roommate at the, in the hotel room with a drink of choice. It's not for public consumption. It's not.
We don't talk about other contestants and feedback, right? It's just should be them. But I have had to tell people like, there was a contest that we had where there was like 5 people. There were just like the feedback was, this is a great, how would you handle it, 5 perfect costumes, and there was just that one thing, those are hard because it's always the people who place, or it's always the people who are like, in the running to place who come to feedback, right? It's like always like I've never done a feedback panel where the best in show doesn't walk in, and you're just like, it's always the people who are really, really passionate and want the feedback, even with the win, right? Like, so it's hard sometimes when you're like, you were perfect. Like, you can't say that. You were perfect, but, somebody just had this other thing. You still have to kind of try to nitpick something that was essentially almost flawless. Like, I find that
always be something that can give it given to someone during feedback. Because to be honest, as someone who has been on the receiving end of you didn't win, but you were perfect, kind of a little frustrating because it's like, well, no, I wasn't, and I want to improve. There's something that I clearly could have done, even if it was pick a different costume. And someone who is at that kind of level, a lot of times they do want the nitpicking. And although with the feedback, normally I will ask, hey, do you want like general feedback? Like, do you want kind of like encouragement for where, you should go for next time? Or do you want me to get nitpicky? And then based on that, I'll kind of go between the two things. We're getting off topic though.
No, I think it depends too, because it's really tough because sometimes, right, like you truly have 2 perfect costumes that are in the space and it's because someone did something better. And I try, because I foresee the online moment, right, where I try not to give feedback in the context of the other competitors, right? Because you don't want them to start internally ranking or creating a moment where we're taking away from the other person who's won. Or I had a person in feedback once ask me directly, right, why did this person win and I didn't? And I don't want to ever put that other person in a position to where they're going to be subject to that person then coming to them and finding out all their whatever. I think it's tough too because, a lot of times it's just who shows up that day, right? Like whoever had the best t-shirt is gonna win. And sometimes they just had, as you said, maybe they just had a better costume choice, or they picked a costume that was more competitive. They picked a whatever that was more competitive than the others. But I really try not to give feedback in the context of their competitors. At the end of the day, this hem wasn't finished, right? So maybe in the future, finish this hem. Now, if everyone in the contest showed up with unfinished hems, then somebody with the least unfinished hem would win, right? So I try and really give feedback specific to a costume that I think is going to elevate it, as opposed to in the context of the other competitors, because I don't want folks to kind of rank themselves, because the day that competitor doesn't show up, they could have also easily won, things like that. So.
Actually, likewise, this is why you don't get your judging sheets back most of the time, because it is on a curve. Well, first of all, our notes are like terrible and out of context and not helpful to you. Sometimes I might write shoes, no paint, or big, and that doesn't mean anything to you, especially when those notes and those scores are in context of the other contestants in the show. So unless you saw everyone else's scores, and that is if we don't have deliberation where those scores might actually change, it will not help you improve. I know we get the question a lot. Can we see our feedback sheets? No, we have like seconds to write down notes, and they're not going to be helpful to you. So coming to the feedback panel is always really good. I will say, personally, I don't go to feedback panels for myself unless I have questions about something weird happening, because at this point in my competition life, I can tell why I didn't win. Sometimes, I'm not going to say that's for everyone and all the time, but usually if I don't get the place that I want, I can tell what that other contestant did. that brought them over the edge. Like, all right, well, I don't, at this point, I just know I need to, instead of nuclear fusion, figure out how to get angel eyelashes. Like, that's just the next step for me. So, and again, that context might change why I didn't place for this show or get the award that I wanted at this show. I might have gotten a different show if this other person hadn't shown up. So oftentimes for me personally, like, judging feedback panels aren't always that helpful. But I don't think that is the case for everyone. I've just been competing for a very long time. And we've seen a lot of contestants that come through and the different things that they bring. I think if you want the feedback, absolutely go. But then know how to receive criticism and not criticism, critique, we'll say, and how to, you can, not everything that the judge tells you will work out, or maybe you don't like it, or you're just like, this isn't for me. You can receive criticism and still go on about your day without being rude or disrespectful or arguing with the judge, because that will get you banned. So, if you do choose to go and get feedback, understand that that's those judges' panel's opinion, and you can take it or leave it. And, try not to take it personally, even though it is your work on display. They don't know you as a human being. It's just feedback.
Also, arguing at feedback, please don't. Like, here's the thing. We're not going to go and take the prize. You're not going to come to the feedback panel, make your case. We're going to go take the prize and give it. It's done. It's done. If you don't want to hear the critique, don't come. But don't come just to argue.
I also want to say, as a judge, giving feedback, some suggestions. This kind of goes back to the idea of how you conduct yourself in front of other contestants, and the fact that, your role is not just to pick a winner, it's to be a positive influence on these competitors and these cosplayers who maybe, this could be a make or break thing. I hear an unbelievable amount of people who say, I had a bad experience, I stopped doing contests. I had a good experience, it really propelled me to improve my cosplay for the future. Contests are a really vulnerable moment for a lot of cosplayers. And, you can't go in and treat it the way that judges and contestants interact on, like, Project Runway and TV shows and stuff like that. You have to have a level of compassion and the ability to, like, speak to people and encourage people. That's a skill set that I think a lot of people don't realize comes with judging. And that also extends to feedback. Sometimes, if you want to give advice to a cosplayer that on paper sounds totally good, which might be, you picked a really simple costume, there were more competitive things in the contest, there wasn't enough complexity going on. That sounds correct. But if you say to the contestant, your costume just wasn't competitive enough, that sounds really disappointing. That sounds like it was something wrong with what the contestant chose, and it doesn't give them, like, an obvious path for the future. Instead, all of your feedback as a judge, my advice that I give people is, first, you start off talking about something positive. I don't care if they showed up in a bag. You find something positive to talk about for that bag that you really liked, that you want them to continue doing, so that they have that level of positive encouragement, that they didn't just totally flub it.
Even if it was, I loved your energy. I loved how passionate you were about this costume. I loved, you clearly put a lot of thought into it. Something.
I'm begging you something. Because that also encourages people. If they banged it out with the hems, keep doing those hems. That's your strong point. Do that, man. And then in terms of the constructive feedback, instead of your costume wasn't competitive, your costume wasn't cosplay contest material, it wasn't competitive enough, that should become something like, I thought that your costume was simple but beautiful. I thought you did an amazing job with what you brought. Next time, I would love to see you do something more complicated so that you can bring us more techniques and show us your full range of everything that you're doing. Because a lot of times, lots of people are bringing lots of techniques, and I think you will go really far in a contest if you also strive for that. It sounds like
actionable.
It's wording. Exactly. It's something that's actionable, it's something that's encouraging, and it doesn't sound like it's very different, but a lot of people are very stressed, and your words have a lot of meaning as a judge.
So I got one more. That was a question from the chat, and this is for under the judging one. How much do you weigh stage presence within the particular contest rules in your judging decisions, and where would releasing pigeons on stage fall within that?
It depends on the rules. Read the rules.
Yeah,
I'm
Avera.
sorry. What was the question? What was the question? I'm sorry. I didn't know that.
I
Stage
don't-
presence.
Stage presence, weighing in on your scores on top of where would releasing pigeons on stage fall within that. I feel like you
I
set me up for
can't
that one.
think of a con that would allow you to do pigeons.
Is this a real question? Is
Yes.
this a legit question
alright,
or sarcasm?
Okay,
Yes.
so it is
Yes.
a real question, and the part 2 of it is a kind of joke at me, and I get it 100%. The pigeon joke, because a certain
I
somebody
tried
in here.
to get Pat I tried to get Pat a long time ago to allow me to release pigeons from underneath
No,
my
doves.
skirt and fly
Doves.
over the crowd. Doves to fly
She
over
goes,
the
"What's so
crowd."
wrong with that?" Immediately, I'm like, "Poop, lots of it."
And it's just become a thing. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah,
People
that's
giving
pretty
me
stage
crocheted
present.
pigeons.
I think it would literally like just shut the con down in a good way. In a good way.
Anywho, to the presentation portion of it.
So yeah, all cons are gonna have different rubrics for how much they weigh presentation versus craftsmanship. I will say a lot of times presentation, regardless of sort of that weighting, whether it's like 5% or technically 0% or it's like 30%. Once you start getting it at full performance, it's different. But I've seen it be the tiebreaker a lot. You know, the judges will go in and they're like, here's our top 3. We're not really sure between 1 and 2. Let's see them on stage again. And then stage, you know, you've made it to top 3. You've made it into 1 or 2, but like your stage presence determines which of that it is.
Movement too, I think, is a big thing, right? Like sometimes we can't in prejudging see the costume move like we can on stage, and I know that you know that could be a really big one. You know, if it flows the right way, if it moves like the character is supposed to, or if you're kind of walking like this, you know. So that's definitely a big one with the stage presence part.
Yeah,
I've
totally
also
agree. I think
seen
it just depends on
stage.
the score. Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I just say it depends on the scorecard. I think some shows are like they provide an opportunity for point scoring. I think most shows at least have some element of staging just to see the movement or the thing fall apart. But I also think, you know, it's an opportunity for you to show off to the audience. So even if the stage portion isn't a huge part of your scoring, still utilize that time to give the audience something and to give you that cheer factor. Because at that point, you've been sweating in that costume for God knows how long, and you want that like kind of audience appeal. So even if the show isn't necessarily factoring in stage performance, I think it's still good to dedicate a little bit of thought into what your 3 points or what your mini skit or whatever is going to look like, just so you can kind of feel that time with the audience.
You might not win, but if you get off that stage and the crowd is going nuts because you know, slayed the stage, you're gonna feel good for the rest of the night at least. You know what I mean? Like it's gonna be a rush usually. So you know, enjoy it. Like it's kind of like the cookie. You know, you've been fasting all day. Here's your cookie. Like take that moment. Um,
All right, so that gets us to our last category, which
Wait, real quick before we move on from judging.
yes,
Really quick. Let's go around and do like one sentence. Don't do this. Is like don'ts for as a judge, like to another judge.
Oh, to another judge. Oh.
Well, like yeah, like okay, I'll give mine. If you and me are judging together and I ask the contestant a question about how did you do this or how did you make this, please don't answer for them. You and I both already know how they did it. I'm asking them because I want to hear them explain it or I want to hear their thought process. I know how they did it. You know how they did it. I don't need you to tell me the information. I need them to explain. That's my don't. Please don't. That will make me hate you forever. Truly.
Don't sit your handler at the judge's table.
Oh God, yes.
It's rude and confusing.
Optics.
Don't, don't do it if you don't love to look at costumes and figure out how people have made them. If you do not want to listen to literally 50 people go through 3 minutes. If this doesn't excite you, it's okay to say no. Don't do it if it's not truly for you. Be honest with yourself.
And try not to like list specific examples. Don't eat my lunch. Please don't do that if you're a fellow
I
judge.
feel like all of us have extremely specific examples that we are not naming by name.
But I also think, don't. I think this kind of just goes back to what we're saying too, but it's not about you. Don't steamroll my question to ask yours. I think that's another piece. Is like sometimes the judge feels the need to get on the minutes, if you will, and they'll start steamrolling everybody, other people in the room who are talking to the contestant. Like, it's just there's no reason to cut in. Everyone has it's 5 minutes. It's not like 30 seconds. Everyone will have a chance to ask the contestant a question. It's fine. Don't eat my lunch. That's the big one. Fellow judge.
I want to hear that story.
I want this too.
I'll
That was
definitely
so
tell
funny.
you
I
all
watched it
later.
happen. I was like, no. Oh man, you took. This kind of like goes to the earlier point about making it about you, but please do not use that as an opportunity to correct the content. Oh, never mind. I've got a more succinct one. With the whole conversation about cheating, I have seen an increase of judges who immediately suspect the contestant is cheating because they maybe didn't answer the question correctly. There are language barriers, people. Sometimes the contestant that walks in the room, their first language isn't English. There's a lot of self-taught people that walk into the room. They may not know the correct term, but if they can explain their way around it, then they may not have, that doesn't mean that they're cheating, right? So I think that there's sometimes an over-vigilance with some judges to like, I gotta catch the cheater because that's gonna make me have a cool story at the end of this, rather than doing their job of assessing the contestant fairly. The language barrier one gets on my nerves in particular. I'm very sensitive to folks that are not English speakers. That's not their native language. And then again, people that maybe are self-taught, they just might not know the term. There are questions you can ask as a judge to get at that if you suspect that they may be lying. But folks that immediately jump to cheating, it's one of my biggest pet peeves. People don't listen. They're not listening to the contestant. They're just trying to get a gotcha moment and then have a funny story to share later at dinner. I'm like, y'all, irks me so much.
I got one for you guys. Don't forget to give your clipboards back to the organizer at the end of the contest.
Dad, too bad. My clipboard.
I don't want to tell you guys how much money I've spent on clipboards over the years, being like, where's my clipboard? Oh, I put it there. Where? Why would you just leave it there? Give them back to me. I need those.
Okay, Pat, to be fair, not with you, but there's definitely been coordinators where like we get off stage after the awards and then we get swarmed by people who are like bah, 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 bah. And then I don't know where I don't see anybody on any of the staff that I've been interacting with. I'm like, I have notes and somebody's cup of water and I don't know where to put them. You need to like have a box, like a drop box for like homeless clipboards.
Half-eaten bag of Cheetos. Don't eat Cheetos while you're judging.
I have seen some very orange judging sheets over the years. All right. Oh, and last one I will say. Don't drink 3 cups of coffee during the judging session.
Whatever.
You're not the boss of me. Don't tell me how to live my life, Pat.
All right. That brings us to organization and hosting. This one, a few of us have done organization in here. Some of us have done hosting. And the biggest one that I'm kicking this whole thing off is, while you are running the contest or hosting, the event is about the contestants, not you. And I have had some people, part of the reason for starting this stream up tonight was because there was a couple of things that happened for costume contests. A particular thing may have been like a costume contest organizer who was basically trying to make it all about them. And you can't do that, especially if you're a host too. You can't be sitting up on stage and yelling at contestants, telling them to get off your stage, to refuse to read their, write-ups that they spent time on. Like, the contestants want to showcase their costume. The last thing they need is a host on stage who's just like, I'm not going to read that. And I've seen it. And people,
It's not your comedy stand-up routine. You're not going to get noticed by some agent in the crowd and be like, "You are hilarious. Would you like to come work in New York?" Right? Like, it's not about you. Just read the names right and be respectful.
yeah.
Definitely like not necessarily cosplay specific hosts, but like I have seen hosts at cons who are attempting very much so to garner a fandom. They think that they are the hotness and people come here to see them and this is my audience and I'm actually an attraction. You should tell people about what I'm going to show up in and that I'm hosting and it'll draw people. And it's just like, with very few exceptions, does anyone actually care? Like, truly. Like, that's just really not a thing in my experience. Like, with the exception of, like, sometimes you have someone who's just hosted, your local con year after year after year after year, and people, like, just love them because they've just been around for so long and grew with the con. But, like, hosting also doesn't make you famous. Like,
I know. My perspective's a little bit different because I was a radio DJ for 6 years, and for mid market and slightly larger market radio, and so I did mornings. So I was a host. I came in and I sat down and I talked, and I could tell you, even though I was kind of popular and my name was on a bus at one point in my life, when I was introducing Beyonce, no one cared about me and what I had to say, right? Like, but it is your job to hype them up. That doesn't mean that just because you're not the main attraction that you can't hype up the crowd. You can't, make people, feel welcome and encouraged, and of course set the tone, right? So setting the tone for the contest of, this is people putting their life out there. This is everything that they've worked for. Show them respect. They deserve their respect. Those are the things that you can do where it makes you look good and the crowd is now into it. That's obviously your example, but everybody wants to see Beyonce. No one wants to see you or hear you. Yes, man.
And on the organizer side of things, I've seen organizers who, like, for what I do for Masters of Cosplay, we have all the contestants go out on stage to take a big group photo at the end, all the awards winners. I've seen competitions where the organizer has to sit front and center, or the host has to sit front and center for those photos, and it's like, no, it's for the contestants, your best in show, your award winners, your other contestants. It's for them, not you. You're not the center of the competition. It's the contestants. It's all about them to showcase their work, not you. And I'm sure pros and cons. I think you guys have had some experiences potentially too, right?
Yeah, there's so much PR work to being a show person, and PR to the extent that you're the PR for your contestants, right? Like, you're their, I don't know, sports. You're their quarterback. Is that what the quarterback does? You can protect them? I don't know. They protect the football. Someone correct me. I don't know. I'm an artist. I don't
Use RPG.
But anyway.
RPG.
Thank you.
RPG.
Okay.
RPG.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
You're the sentinel, right? Like, you're the sentinel against the powers that be towards your contestants, right? And you're there to support them. Now, I think it is a tough job, so I don't recommend coordinating for everyone. Some days I'm like, what have I allowed myself to do? But I do think if you're going to take that responsibility on, you're managing a lot, right? You're managing the desires of the audience, who really, they're there just for a fun show and to support their friend. You're there for the contestants who want a fair and process with integrity and, clear and understandable rules and clear expectations. You're managing the convention itself. They want to turn doll hair so that they can get, more attractions and things like that. You're managing the online portion and things later. You're managing judging, so you're kind of doing contract negotiations sometimes. Like, there's a lot of hats with it. And I think if at any point the sun of your situation is yourself, it gets really tough to do those jobs and to be aware of those perspectives. In fact, to an extent, we talk about how important it is for judges to be good stewards of the community. I think it's equally, if not more important, frankly, for the contest showrunners to also be very aware of what's going on in the community, very aware of what's going on in their own community, very aware of what conversations are happening, because you're going to have to be able to pivot to accept the challenges that all those different constituents face. I mean, when unnamed incident A happens, right, online and everyone blows up about it, well, the stakeholders are having a perspective about it. The contestants who are entering your show are having a perspective about it. The audience is now coming into a different perspective, and your convention owner may have a perspective on how that's going to make that thing look. So you as the showrunner have to do a lot of mitigating to figure out how you're going to change things or enforce things that you have the same when a big thing happens in the community. So I think it's so important, as a showrunner, to recognize it is about your community. It is about the people. You can't just kind of be like, this is the me show, because frankly, you're running around sweating, carrying boxes. It's not glamorous. No one wants to see you. It's yeah.
Or showrunners taking it, like, I get hosts and I get judges, I get guests, but like showrunners think it's all about them.
Man, there's like this weird, and this is another thing of like clout of like show running sometimes. It is actually insane. And I'm just like, you guys, what?
It's like the worst job.
Right. It's like I've never looked worse. I've never been at the least able to articulate and communicate a sentence than when I'm show running, because it's such you're paying so much attention to other people. And there is a weird cloutness, I think, to show running that exists. We've, I think, yeah, a lot. But I guess with anything where there's like a hierarchy, if you will, there's clout, and it's not, it does not immune to showrunners for sure.
It is weird.
I would also say too, like, because you're sort of in charge of a lot of stuff, you cannot be. I'm not going to use that analogy. I'm going to say you have to sort of be willing to stake your claim on your show and your contestants and defend them. Sometimes, like, the organizer may bring it. Let's just use an MC for an example. An MC that's not good at their job, right? There's not a whole lot you can do in the moment as a showrunner if you're watching your MC mispronounce all the names. That is feedback you can give to the show organizer, whoever hired that MC, if you're not in charge of bringing in your MCs. We've definitely been in situations. We have different levels of control over some of the different shows that we've operated over the years. And so being able to mitigate that is a different skill set you have to have. So, sometimes after the show's over, they're like, look, show owner or people who are my boss, this thing didn't work. How can we make improvements for this next time? Or, if you have a contestant that's like acting out of line, you have to ban them and tell them why. Shadow banning, I think, is like the silliest rule ever. It's from people that don't like conflict, and no one likes conflict. Spoiler alert. No one should enjoy conflict. But there are times where you have to be like, listen, this is not acceptable. I don't like this for my show. And here's why. I'm a big believer that you have to tell the contestant why they were banned or why they were like removed from the show or why they didn't get something if it was related to a rule violation, because it will spread and they'll just martyr themselves if you don't tell them the answer. So, anyway, there's a lot of like dirty work that happens behind the scenes that you just like, you got to clean up all the messes, the social media fires that happen afterward. If there are any, like, you have to deal with it. You have to answer to different people for different deliverables that you have, on your plate. So I think it's just really important to kind of think about, this is not an easy like job. I love cosplay. I love the community. I would not do this if I didn't love the competition scene and love all the different contestants we get to see and like to be something that can help make an inclusive contest. But it is a lot of work and it is very not glamorous. I think if you do think it's glamorous or this is going to be your moment to become like super shiny special cosplayer, you are in the wrong area. Definitely not that.
Yeah,
Sleepless nights, man.
Hosts 100% fall into that pit, but like, if you think judging is a stressful job and you'll get glam and fame and it'll be so much fun, hosting is 10 times worse, my friends. Let me tell you. I do think it is a bit on showrunners to pick a host who is appropriate for their thing. Like, if you're just getting Joe Normie guy to pronounce a bunch of Mikus, he's not gonna. You're setting the man up for failure. Like, come on. But even somebody who is a cosplayer or somebody who is a nerd, getting a list with like 50 different Miku names on there, and you don't know all of these things, like, it's so deeply stressful, and you're gonna mess it up, no matter how good your intentions are. Like, as a host, I will try to ahead of time, if I'm scanning the list and there's some stuff that I'm just like, oh my god, what the hell is that? If I can, I will try to go to the cosplayer and say, hey, how do I pronounce your handle? Like, that's priority number 1, is to get the cosplayer names correct. Priority number 2 is trying to get the character and the series names correct, which if I can talk to the cosplayer, I will also ask them that. Sometimes they're in a pen away from you and you can't do that, so you're left to try and Google it on your phone. And sometimes you're handed the sheet 5 minutes before you go on stage, and then you just have to pray. So I would also say, as an audience member, don't necessarily assume that all hosts are butts because we can't pronounce your mikus. It is hard, and sometimes we are not necessarily given pronunciations.
Or
but
sometimes the cosplayer has given you the wrong pronunciation. That's happened before.
Okay, I got a sheet at the last time I judged. I got the sheet 5 minutes ahead of time. I was like, and I was going on Google trying to like get all the names. Me and my co-host, we were split, dividing and conquering, and I was like, how do I pronounce that? And he says with the utmost confidence the way to pronounce some Yu Yu Hakusho name. So, something that everyone but me knows apparently, and it was wrong. And afterwards, all my friends did nothing but give me shit about it all night long, despite my best efforts, because I got some Animu 90s thing incorrect. Like Inuyasha, pronouncing that wrong.
Naruto.
So their parents.
Naruto. Yeah, it was apparently it was like Hien or something.
Yep.
I don't know. I did it wrong, and I sounded like a fool. But anyway, as a host, I would say if you possibly can get your stuff from the coordinators ahead of time or have them email it over to you, and then you can make some little notes, that is the most helpful thing. But even if your host is trying their level best and pronouncing your mikus wrong, don't dunk on them. They're trying hard.
These are people who will probably aren't getting paid a lot, if there's anything. These are volunteers who are here because they love you. A little bit of grace goes a long way sometimes, I think, for everybody. Showrunners, like, things go wrong. There's a big difference between intentionally doing something that is not a good thing and making and being, malice, and pronouncing a couple names wrong, and maybe you spent too long backstage in the alleyway or something. I mean, if they want to do right, and it's obvious that they want to do right, but sometimes things are out of people's control, just a little bit of grace, I think kind of can go a long way with your enjoyment too. That way you're not nitpicking every single thing and say this contest was terrible because we didn't get water until 4 p.m. and it's 4:30 or whatever.
It's also about the coordinators picking, again, people who are passionate about it for the right reasons as well.
Yeah, I think understated skill is like something is inevitably going to go wrong, and it could be as minor as the wrong music gets pulled up, and then you have to stretch for time while the music gets switched, and then the cosplayer gets calmed down, or the wrong award gets read for the wrong person. Both those things happened. I know. I'm pulling from life. If don't host if you're not good on your feet and able to cover. I don't host. I'm not. Not my skill set.
Similarly with organizers have to be able to think on their feet as well, because you never know what situation will be thrown at you, like potential situations before going on stage that could be medical related. I'm not saying anybody in particular, but letting as a contestant, if you have something like that too, immediately let the contest organizer know, because a good contest organizer is going to think on their feet to figure out what to do and figure out the situation, and definitely let them know for that type of situation. One of the things I'm going to get into next, we're going to double this up because we're starting to run a little late. We're almost at 3 hours. This is going to be a double up for it. If you're organizing as an organizer, my whole thing that I always say, because people ask me like they want to get into running costume contests, what should they do? The biggest thing I always say is arrive early. And when I say early, if the contestants have to be there for 10, if the judges have to be there for 10, you're there at 9 o'clock. If the contestants have to be there for 5, you're there at 4. Like, you always have to arrive early. Like, this is big and this is key, and I'm sure pros and cons, you guys are also in the same boat in that one. Always being there, like, early.
I'd agree. Like,
Earlier than
things
you think.
things happen. Things are often late, and that's because life happens. And I talked to another showrunner about this too. You only have one time a year to practice, right? And then then it's over. And then you have the next show, which has a different set of rules. So you don't get to practice for that one particular contest, for that one particular site, but one time a year. So things are always going to go wrong. Every year, I think I've built a better mousetrap to like help figure out the different things that go wrong. I get up extra early. I like send things in months in advance, and then there'll be some cog in the machine that has completely thrown everything off, or there'll be something else that like the weather. We're in the Midwest. The weather's always an issue. So I think on the show running piece of it, right? Like if you want to get into show running, volunteer. And I think this is a really great thing for anyone that wants to like be kind of on the inside and see how the community works, is like volunteer. Sign up to be an assistant, sign up to like staff convention, and just see what it's like, because it's very different than judging, and it is very different than competing. Having kind of the Triforce experience, I think, has made me better at all three, because I can kind of see what the different needs are for that. But if you ever want to get into it, it is not glamorous. You will not be getting fancy, higher, more followers on social media. You're not going to get cost famous from show running. You are sweating and carrying boxes. I cannot emphasize that enough. This is not glamorous. And you have to be constantly in tune to what's going on in the community. Who's a bad actor? Who's a really good actor? Like, all those different things. I think it's something you have to take seriously. I probably put in more hours show running than I do my actual day job. So, that's just something to think about.
Your boss isn't watching, right?
My boss knows. She's very supportive, actually. She thinks it's cool.
I think too, the other point on here that you were mentioning is like you got to plan like as the day. I actually take a lot of time and think of myself as a competitor who knows exactly nothing, and then walk myself through what my contest looks like. And then you realize that you're there early and you're also there late. So I think there's another point that Pat brought up, that you're there before the show starts and you're there well after it ends, because again, you're waiting for your phone to blow up where some issues happened, or getting people out of a room is also a long moment. So yeah, always plan for it to take longer than it is. I think to Regan's point earlier, like the shows that you're show running shouldn't be your fun shows, because you're going to be doing all the things, work-wise while you're there. It should be fun. You should do it because you enjoy it, but it is a lot of hard work. And again, can't emphasize enough, this cannot be your route to clout. It's just not going to happen.
Nope, you're the person behind the scenes that isn't going to be seen by the audience. If you get seen by the audience, it's because you have to do something. Like I'm try to be the voice behind the curtain if I have to co-host. I don't like being up on stage if I don't have to be. I like being the person behind the curtain, making sure the contestants are comfortable before they go up on stage. If I'm doing the announcing, I'm doing the announcing, but that's where I like to be. I like to make sure everybody is taken care of from top to bottom. I know you two are the same way. And this also brings me to the next thing, which is your priority on contest day is the contest. Plan out getting food and taking bathroom breaks, but always expect a full day of coordinating on contest day. Don't plan for photo shoots. You're not going to meet that celebrity who's there only for Saturday. You're not going to be able to do it, because your priority is that. You're there early, like I said. You're going all the way through judging. After judging's done, you've got deliberations. You've got getting all the paperwork all together to bring to the contest room. You're doing a walkthrough to make sure you can figure out where your contestants are going to be staging, as well as how they're going to be brought on stage, off stage, where the awards are going to be set up. You're planning this whole thing out from top to bottom. It's a long day. You probably are working about 12 hours, and that's something that a lot of people don't realize, how long a contest day can go for somebody that's doing that. So always plan accordingly. And I say this as somebody who had one time not eaten food or drank water for the entire day, and I almost blacked out. It was not good. So
For shame. No, I get it though. You kind of get in the zone. You're like, oh God, what's a granola bar? I don't have time. Gotta find my clipboard.
God, I'm also gonna be rude and just say, cosplay coordinators, please either build in long enough lunch breaks for your judges, or make sure they can get food. Shocking amount do not.
Yeah, there's been a
1000%.
lot of cons where we don't eat a big breakfast, late dinner. That's it.
Yep. Because that 30 minutes between prejudging and the show ain't enough time.
You know what? Actually, I talked to a judge who puts that in their contract. They're like, I need to have time for food. Because there are, true, to your point, some shows that just do not give you an opportunity to have a break, and that's just inhumane. And you can't function properly if you've been looking at 50-something costumes for the whole day. Your brain gets fried if you don't have some nutrients to put into your body, or like a break to not think about things. Use the bathroom. So totally agree. You have to plan times for breaks for your judges. They are just
You
as
have
good
to go to the
guests to your
bathroom.
show.
Even if you have to run frantically down the back of a pipe and drape to get to a bathroom, like you will have to go to the bathroom, and I mean it should be something that the showrunners can plan in for, you know. Like
I judged a contest that not only was there no actual breaks for lunch when lunch was available, but there were also no bathroom breaks incorporated into the schedule. So we just had to do it when people were late, and then the contestants started dunking on us for not being in the room when we were supposed to be in the room, obviously.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I think it's such a PR thing, right? Like, you have to think about the human needs of your people, and then if your judges are gonna be scrambling or late because they can't eat, the contestants are gonna blame the judges, and then you're gonna have to like people manage both of those things. So if you think in your brain, it takes me, I don't know, 5 minutes to walk to the bathroom, and probably X amount of time to use it and then get back, and just cut out the amount of contestants you let in your show so you have time for it. Like, it's thinking like that, right? Like, you have to build in human things so that you can avoid the train wreck later of your judges getting flack for your lack of thinking, or your contestants haven't had a chance to eat, or you haven't had a chance to eat. There's so much forethinking that happens, and again, show running is no perfect solution. There's just always a human element, and sometimes, as Con said, you think you've figured it all out, and then oh god, I totally overlooked this in my schedule. Stuff's going to happen, but I really think you have to be intentional about thinking about the human beings. The judges are going to need to eat. They're going to need to get from their hotel room to your show. The contestants are going to need to get onto the stage in some way. How are they going to do that? So yeah, I think you just have to have that level of forethought for sure.
Oh, and I will just tell you guys through personal experience. Heinz Convention Center.
Where is that?
You guys were at it for Anime Boston.
Oh, yeah, that was
oh,
where
hi,
you
oh,
Yeah.
that was behind. Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we had to do Fan Expo Boston there last year, and that convention center has one little food court area, and they don't allow outside food or drink.
You brought
Let
us
you
lots
in
of
with
food,
Dunkin'.
though.
I brought you
You're allowed
guys
to
snacks.
You're allowed to
I
take
snuck
Dunkin'
it in,
in.
but
They're fine with that.
first thing in the
Listen.
morning usually, but not afterwards. They're
Pat, the amount of Dunkin' Donuts I've taken into Anime Boston is astronomical. All of the security people will let you in with Dunkin' Donuts.
I almost brought in a whole bunch of chicken nuggets for the judges from Shake Shack, and my wife got stopped at the doorway before she could even walk through. They're like, "You can't bring that in here."
Oh, I
Didn't you
remember
go-
that.
Didn't you get like 7 bottles of barbecue sauce in there?
That's the difference between barbecue sauce and nuggets.
So excellent. Oh my god, yes. Yeah, man. Sometimes the conventions that are policies are also your biggest op, and you just gotta figure out a nice opaque bag or whatever.
All right, so
I'll tell y'all a horror story when we're done.
so
I can't name it. I can't name and shame here.
so next thing I got on the list, I mean straight out, your contestants are guests. Their show, the contest is their show. It's the panel. They're the stars. Treat them like guests. My whole adage when I'm organizing, coordinating, is treat others the way you want to be treated. You treat every single one of those contestants like outstanding. Like they deserve to be treated like guests for the show. Like if something's going wrong, if they need water, immediately get them water. Like you don't want people to overheat. Treat them like you want to be treated, because at the end of the day, the costume contest, there's no costume contest if there's no contestants. So if you're an organizer, be right on top of it. Take care of your contestants, because at the end of the day, they're going to also talk to other people and say, that was an amazing experience. This person, like I will straight out say it. Like I get on social media after a contest and I get people that tag me left and right on Instagram saying like, Pat really took care of me. I'm like, I don't need the attention for it. I want you to have a good experience, because at the end of the day, if you have a positive experience, that means I'm doing my job well.
No, you're the gold standard. No, it's true. I would agree. Yeah, you definitely take care of people, and I think you know, what's also great as showrunners, we have a little bit of a community, and we all talk. And you know, I think this is one of the next points is like, you know, knowing what other shows do and what works and how to anticipate needs better. And like, look, these are the things that my contestants were asking about this year. How have you all fixed this problem in the past? And really just kind of hop it in the inbox from another showrunner and be like, look, how did you troubleshoot this? And I think that makes a really great community of us trying to make bigger, better shows. But it also helps you see areas that you may not, you know, anticipate and can help other showrunners get there. So, yeah.
I'm still learning a lot of stuff. Like, I just found out recently in something that I want to start implementing into shows. So, no one ever told me that the Crown Championship, you can drop off your build books the day before. I did not know that that was
I didn't
something
know that.
I found out recently.
Yeah.
That's something that that Crown started doing, was allowing for drop offs of build books. And I'm like, honestly, 100%, I want to get that implemented in as soon as possible, because I didn't even, that's something I never even thought of, because you got people that are there for the entire weekend, and giving them the ability to drop off their bill book means it's something that they don't have to worry about running into the show in their costumes on the day of. That way, they hand it to you. They can be outside normal like just normal tire. Here you go. Put a sticky note on it. Bing, bang, boom. We're ready for tomorrow.
You know you have it.
Yep.
It's definitely one thing to kind of hammer home too. So it's not only the people who compete a lot, we all know each other, and then the people who also judge all know the people who compete and each other, and then it's also the people who host and who showrun, and they all know each other. And it is just like one very small community of people who like to make costumes and walk on stage with them. And there's like of 1% of the people who cosplay at a cosplay in the country, we're 1% of 1%, and we all know each other. So, you know, we know who the good ones are. We know who the people who are constantly causing problems are. Like, we know each other very well. And, you know, don't be a dick. Like, that is my number one advice. Like, just don't be a jerk, because you're a jerk at one convention as a novice can carry through to maybe not becoming a guest and maybe not becoming a judge, maybe not doing this. Like, just treat people with kindness and respect. You'd be amazed how that simple thing can get you so far as a showrunner, showing respect to the people who are here to, you know, as a host, showing respect to the audience and your contestants, and as judges and contestants showing respect to each other and your other contestants. Like, it's so simple, but it's honestly something that propels, you know, it's really what kind of can give you a good reputation and get things going, whatever it is that you want to do.
You know what? You said something interesting, and because I talked about this on Threads earlier today with somebody, because your reputation is very important. We are a very small community. Everybody talks, and if you're trying to get into the judging track from like a showrunner's perspective, we're talking to other showrunners who may have had you as a judge. We're like, how was this person? Were they good? Great, love that. Were they bad? Great, well, invite them. You know, and a bad reputation will spread quickly. So just kind of be mindful. You know, if you're part of the group, you know, of people that compete and want to get into this area, just be mindful of the skeletons you have in your closet. If something will come out at some point, and how you handle it is also very important. So, you know, I think, and actually, I'll say, like, reputation matters more than numbers on social media. So every show has different things that they require us to do, and who we bring in, and what power we have over bringing in who or whoever. But your reputation matters more than your numbers. If you are an amazing builder, you're great with the community, you have, you know, a stellar reputation from other showrunners, that will carry you further than being, you know, having a billion gajillion followers on TikTok, but you're known to, like, I don't know. Well, anyway, are a bad person. So just
known to
kind of be
not
mindful
show
of those
up.
kinds of things.
To just not
So
show
what?
up on the last, not show up on the last day, or, you know, throw a
You know,
tantrum
just like,
or
don't
whatever.
come. You're bad mouthing other contestants. You're bad mouthing other judges. You're upset on social media about why you don't get to be a judge. You know, all those things, like,
You're
people look
lying
at.
to everybody.
And so, you know, I think it's just, it's not cute. You know, it's a professional package. Would you want to hire somebody, pay them money to represent your show, and they're always online talking about how they should be getting something and they're never getting it, how they're better than so and so, and how they want to intimidate baby contestants, like all these things? Like, no one wants to work with those kinds of people. I try to tell folks, like, you know, there are so many people that want to be judges. Why would I pick the one that we have to spend all day with for 12 hours on multiple days that are mean? I'm not going to pick that person, because they're not fun to be around.
That's pretty good. Like I 100% agree with that one because yeah, you don't want to be around somebody for an entire day that's just going to bring the overall mood down for everybody, competitors, other judges, the organizer. Because for me, I love having a blast. I don't know about you guys. When I'm having a good time running a contest, the contestants are having a good time, and the host has a good time. I will tell you straight out, Regan, outstanding host. So if any other contest organizer out here, I'm plugging Regan because
Until I mispronounce Hien, then I'm the worst host.
all right. So we got a couple things left. Just two. We're gonna get these last two banged out, and then we're done for the night. All right. This might be more for organizer side of things. What should a cosplayer, judge, or competitor do if a convention doesn't uphold their responsibilities, i.e., agreed compensation, advertised pricing, confirmed accommodations? How do you handle that in a professional manner that without being taken advantage of by the convention? I'm going to straight out say it. Contracts. 100% contracts. Get it in writing, because if they're going against the contract, you have it in writing. That is 100% there. If they advertise pricing and they don't provide the pricing, they advertised it. It's in writing. That's the best thing I can say 100%. In writing is the best way to have everything documented and set. This way, if they don't uphold their end of the bargain, it's up to you what you want to do after that. But 100%, if they say like they are not going to provide something, for me personally, I won't say the name of the show. There was an event that I ran a costume contest for. I didn't get paid. I didn't hit the cash prizing for the contestants in the contest that was owed. And I will leave it at there were some legalities there, because the person that was supposed to win Best in Show was supposed to win $1,000, and they went after the convention. For me personally, I just said, I don't feel like wasting my time. I just moved on.
I will also say, as a guest judge, getting your stuff in writing, your writer should actually contain a surprising amount of details that you might not actually think about the first 1 or 2 or even 3 times that you guessed. And then the mistake makes you add more things to the writer. Things like when a flight is supplied to me, it needs to be a class of ticket where I can choose a seat. Or I need a double bed in this room because I'm bringing a handler. I need access to either a per diem, or if a green room is supplied, it must be a green room that supplies meals, not potato chips. Just kind of stuff like that you may not think about if you're new to guesting or judging this kind of stuff. I actually run a Discord for guesting, and people give advice or examples or answer questions about like riders and contracts and stuff like that. So if you are new and want suggestions for what should go in your contract to prevent a situation like that, that Discord is open for everybody. Because that's also happened to us. Like, we've shown up with me, Scone, and 2 handlers, and we showed up and we checked in and there was a king bed. And then it was a huge fiasco. We actually ended up having to go to a different hotel because that hotel was sold out of double beds. But because it was in the contract, they eventually made it right for us.
I agree more. The contract is so essential, and being kind of, again, the steward of your own misery, right? If you are aware what you need and you don't put that in writing, then the cons kind of at liberty to do whatever they're going to do. So put in there what you want, or at least if it's not in your own contract and they've sent you a contract, get it in writing in an email, because then it's in writing too, right? Like, I want a double bed, I want these tickets, I need to have access to food, water, these are the expectations going forward. And I even think, in judging is great too. Luggage is another important thing. Like, how are you going to...
Yeah, because you would think, I'm a cosplayer, of course they'll give me luggage. Absolutely, they will not give you luggage unless you specify it.
And then they're like, why do you need to bring 2 bags? We only asked you to bring 6 costumes.
And I'll
Somebody's
say,
gotta
if they
understand.
in the event the con doesn't deliver, either by accident or diabolicalness, for me, my first option is to email the show. And if they don't respond in whatever is a reasonable amount of time, usually for me it's 2 weeks, especially like right after showtime, or send an email to whoever's in charge of executing my contract or whatever. Then I start going up the chain. I, I think some people skip immediately to the public outcry before we've kind of exhausted all the solutions first, because at that point, no one only gets the full story of how you've been slighted. They just see a rampage online. Now, unless something, again, truly diabolical is happening, you've got to really think about how your response to being mistreated is going to be perceived by others and how that's going to look. So you can throw a huge moment online to take out this other show, fine, but then you're also going to impact your other opportunities potentially. So just thinking about the most respectful way of dealing with you've been slighted. I mean, it's happened to us. We've gotten so many just things people have tried and not tried to do or holding contracts, and it always starts with an email, and then it gets increasingly more spicy and going up the chain. I think that's the best way of addressing it. And then if you want to go the legal route, you can. But you always have the right to do that. But I think
Well,
thinking
yeah,
through the
so-
best, yeah, you just want to measure your response, I will say.
I've seen a lot of people going after like small, like not small cons but like non-for-profit cons and cons that are attached to colleges that are held by um the students, and the registrar hasn't paid the guest, believe it or not, a lot of these college cons are actually paying for guests, and giving appearance fees. But I think it's also understanding what kind of con you're accepting. Are these like 20-year-olds who are about to graduate college, and it's going to be some bureaucratic, hoops to get through in order to get paid, setting your own some reasonable expectations? Or is it Pat and Fan Expo and they are $1 million corporation and they should have their stuff together? There's also like weighing those kinds of things, right? Like of who are you talking to? I see it all the time with, for some reason, college cons. First of all, I can't college cons, like thank you for paying your guests, right? Like it's a small con and they have small budgets. But
I think, like,
Tammy.
I agree with you
Yeah.
that you give a little bit more flexibility to shows
Yeah.
that might not have, like, for example, here's, like, let's just say I have an appearance fee. The show is a college con, they can't afford it. Great, we can negotiate. Maybe you'll throw in this, or I'm really passionate about this particular direction of the show, so I'll do this. We'll negotiate, right? I do think that everyone has to be held accountable to a contract, because then they learn that they can't take advantage of other people. If you're too nice, then they never learn their lesson, I think
All
it's
right.
just
Yeah.
been burned too many times.
Don't listen to
Like,
me. I'm just really nice.
no. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying.
No, I am.
No, I don't mean to like make it sound like you're totally wrong. I'm just saying, like, folks don't learn unless you teach them sometimes. Like, if you're gonna play the game of being a convention and you're gonna be responsible for these people's livelihood, not necessarily livelihood, but responsible for people, then you also have to like uphold your end of the bargain. Otherwise, you're not gonna last very long. I've seen so many shows that don't think that their cosplayers deserve a hotel. And if you don't make the argument as a guest and advocate for yourself, they will never learn, because they won't listen to the staff. They won't listen to the community. You as the guest, in their eyes, have some more power. So sometimes you have to be the advocate to make change for people that might come after. I'm not saying it's like your responsibility, but I'm just saying, like, sometimes these shows, if you can give them an inch, they will take a mile. So if you could, I think most people are well-intentioned, but there are some people on there that are really not.
Quite frankly, like a lot of the cons that are the ones that are not sending out prizes and pretending they didn't ever advertise prizes, stiffing their guests, people show up and there's no rooms. They're not very well run in other more public facing aspects too. Like, there's cons out there that are just, everybody knows they're a shit show. Everybody knows that. And if they emailed me, I'm not going to go guest for them regardless of what's in the contract, because I don't trust them. So, you can always do a gut check. It's not 100%, but there's some correlation.
You can ask questions too. If they're reaching out to you and they're like, hey, we want you to guest at our show. Depending on where it is, I'm like, well, great. What is it you can offer me? This, and this. Okay, wonderful. If it's in a really sketchy area or there was a huge conflict that happened the year before, I will ask, will I be the victim of a hate crime here? What's happening down there? And these are fair questions to ask when you're in the negotiation phase. And there's professional ways of doing it. Obviously, don't go in there and be like, you're a racist, you know, I don't really like you, but I guess I'll grace you with my presence if you pay me what I'm worth. No, ask professional questions, right? Like, hey, I'm concerned about this. I heard this happened last year. Can you explain what has been done to remedy that? I would really like to guest at your show, but I just like a little bit more information. Or, you know, I've just had issues in the past. I just want to know that this particular thing will be included in my contract. I have dietary restrictions. You know, can you accommodate these things that I need? These are all fair questions, and you can phrase them in a way that's not combative. And if it doesn't work out, you can say, "Thank you so much. It won't work out for me this time. Maybe keep me in mind for future opportunities." Or, "Sorry, it didn't work out. Have a great day." You know, you don't have to be nasty if what the show is offering you doesn't fit your needs.
This kind of circles back to taking the initiative and doing research too. Research the show, look at what they have, history, all that jazz. First year shows, always be a little cautious with first year shows, depending on who's backing it. But definitely research. It's hugely helpful. Which I'm going to bring us to the last question of the night. This was one from chat. How do I help bring craftsmanship competitors to a smaller con? What can we do to make people want to compete with us?
Money.
Surprising.
I think there's three options with any con. One is good prize. It doesn't have to be money, but it should be a good prize. Or alternatively, notoriety. Some contests you do, even though you're going to sink more money into their costume, but the notoriety is what you're doing it for. Or 3, an incredible experience. You need to have one of those 3 things. And you don't have to have all 3, but you got to have one of them to attract people.
And if you have
Judges, I
all
think
depends
you
on-
can bring, if you're a new con, and you don't have the notoriety, judges can bring you notoriety. Like I would travel, far to be judged by a particular judge who I'm respect to. So that could be like one way to kind of like go with that too.
I would also say grassroots is really, really important, especially in the community. If your community doesn't value craftsmanship, figure out a way to make it a priority. If you talk to your programming team who's accepting panels, and accept more craftsmanship-centered panels, right? Like, or for people who are going to teach it, so that folks see, hey, this is on the panel or the schedule a lot. There's so many cosplay, like how to make panels. Seems like this is the value for the show. Same thing for bringing in judges that are going to be able to speak positively about the experience. Same thing about pricing. But I think if you're really going to try and get people to come be crafting or crafters, they have to see it as a value at the show. Be that through pricing, but the best grassroots way is to get your community interested. The best way to do that is through paneling or through other kind of community activities that really increase desire for crafting, and also lower the barrier to get into crafting. If you're a show that doesn't have a high craftsmanship interest, don't make a lot of complicated rules. Make it super simple to get into that show so that people kind of get their foot wet. And then as your community starts to develop, you can make more complicated rules or more, things to kind of set things apart. But, I think sometimes people are like, I want to be the next whatever, and they don't think about how to grow things from the ground. Get good pricing for sure, but you also have to create a value and statement in your community of really growing that piece. So.
Can you imagine a library con starting out with like crown rules?
Oh my god.
With like Halloween candy as pricing. Yeah, you have to like listen to your community for sure. If you like
There are
force
cons. There
them,
are
like,
cons. There are cons that are like should be runway, but they have like crown level rules, and you're like, all right, okay, we're doing this.
what works
That
out for you.
exists.
None of y'all
Yeah.
have even held a snap blade before, but okay.
I would say if you're a showrunner who's trying to bring that unique experience that attracts people into your contest, I was very impressed with a lot of the logistics that ALA uses. I find that they are a community that, first of all, they've got the grassroots, super into cosplay. A lot of the cosplay community in that area goes to that con because of it. And then on top of it, the showrunners give the contestants a really good experience, like really good green room. They cater for them, incredible stage, incredible judges, just everything from start to finish makes people want to be there. And it don't matter if you don't win, it don't matter if you don't get money, because you're having a great time.
All right, I think it is time we start wrapping it up. So how we're going to end this is as follows. Shout out where everybody can find you guys. so that way people that may not be following you right now, they can go and follow you. They can check in with you guys. They could ask some questions if you guys have on social media. So let's do the round the horn right across from the beginning. So Avera, I'm going to have it with you because it's alphabetical order. You muted yourself.
Right. Don't be an Eric. Okay. You can find me at Avera_cosplay on Facebook, Instagram. I'm kind of on Threads, and some definitely not on X. But yeah, Instagram is your best bet. And I usually check most of my DMs, reply to questions, comments, concerns, and would send you memes if you want them. Even if you don't, you might get some.
I want memes. I'm going to send you barbecue sauce in return.
Yeah.
We got you to try barbecue sauce. You really liked it.
Okay,
And
the one was good, but the cranberry one, Pat, like, you should be ashamed of yourself. That was disgusting.
I
It
used that
tasted
for
like
my Thanksgiving
cranberry
chicken wings.
bacon.
Thank you very much, and they were outstanding.
I doubt it.
Cranberry barbecue sauce?
Yeah.
Yes, it tasted like cranberry baby food.
Like I might like
It was a
that.
rough one.
Actually.
I don't.
It was a rough
No,
one.
no.
I don't
That's
like
that's-
barbecue sauce so like that much. So that sounds good.
Yeah, I don't like barbecue sauce, but I didn't like that one. I liked the really vinegary one that tasted like pure vinegar. That one was great. I was like,
Arthur
okay.
Brains, but we're digressing. We're Pros and Cons Cosplay. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, so you can find us there. I'm also the founder of the Cosplay Contest Support Group on Facebook, if you're familiar. So feel free to join that. Most of the folks, I think, on this call, or at least in the group, or like sometimes answer questions. And it's a great community for folks that want to learn more about competing. We're going to do a chat here in another couple of weeks about competing with disabilities. I'm really excited about. So yeah, come find us there.
And we are Cowbutt Crunchies Cosplay. We are on Cowbutt Crunchies on all of the various things. We're most active on Instagram, although I will be posting the really long build book video to YouTube, shockingly, which we are not active on, but I guess I'm going to start being active on, and I'll pop all those in the channel for you guys as well. Yeah, you guys can find us there. We're also on cowbuttcrunchiescosplay.com if you want to buy our books on various cosplay things.
And I'm Pat. I go by the Covenator. I'm on Instagram, YouTube. I started doing my fun little Just Cause Wings thing where I talk with cosplayers and we eat chicken wings. Not hot ones because I actually have tasty wings and one spicy one. So thank you guys so much for coming out tonight. We hope you guys were informed very much across the board. Thank you to everybody that participated. Cowbutt, Pros and Cons, Avera. It's late. We got to get to bed. I have to be up at 3 a.m. to catch a flight for 6 a.m. in Boston. So
You messed up.
I don't care. I don't sleep anyways before I flight. So I hate flying. So we hope you guys had a good time. Have a great night. And who knows, we'll do another one of these soon, talking different things for costume contests and whatnot.
Do it with wings.
I'll get you guys all wings. How about that? All right. Have a good night, everybody.